2018 morning session of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaly.
Here.
Fritz. Fish. Wheeler.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you, everyone. As you well know, this is a very busy council agenda today. We have a number of items here that impact lower income folks who are seeking housing. I want to make sure we get to that. We have a number of our labor partners here today to talk about some important labor issues that are before the council. Due to quorum issues, we've had to shuffle things around a bit, so we have a very full agenda. I want to thank people who have accommodated those changes, particularly some of the Bureau staff who've worked hard to make this work. So thank you for that. And with that, communications, please, Carla.
Oh, Mayor, I need to make a
Daly.
motion before communications.
Commissioner Daly.
Making a motion to suspend the rules to move time certain item to the morning agenda. So I move that the rules be suspended to take the time certain item 771 from the afternoon agenda and place it at the end of this morning's agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you'll need 4 votes for that motion to carry.
Can you defer that for a few minutes? I know Commissioner Fish will be here. Can you defer that for a bit?
Okay, thank you.
First, communications, please.
Item 738, request of David Keefe Davis to address council regarding city-sponsored political terrorism.
Good morning.
Is it a good morning? Ted, I'd like to start out with saying you can't grow a beard. You can't grow a beard, Ted, so give it up. You're looking like a little teenager with that little scruff on your face. And I wanted to tell you a quote from someone that you've said you'd admired in the past, Thomas Paine, right? Are you an admirer of him? He said, "Politics is a trade at which only the most despicable scoundrels and swindlers can hope to succeed." What do you think of that quote, Ted? Are you a despicable scoundrel? How about you, Chloe? How about you, Dan? Okay, so this is about the political terrorist attacks by the Portland police against cop watchers. You've been issuing stalking orders against cop watchers. Your chief of police, Chief Outlaw, got a stalking order put on Eli Ritchie for asking her a few questions. Your Nazi cop, Mark Kruger, who's the head of the Vice unit, which is, you know, a wet dream for a Nazi eugenicist that likes to wage war on minorities and the lower classes. And I also saw your buddy who recently gave you a $10,000 donation for your campaign, right? The hotel owner of Portland, how he got elected as the ambassador for the EU by Trump. So you and Donald Trump have something in common. He got $1 million in his campaign, and you got $10,000, and now one of your buddies is an appointee for the Trump regime. That might explain your war on cop watchers and how you have no respect for the Constitution, and how you're just a little Harvard rich boy that's out of place, out of time, totally irrelevant to what's going on in 2018. Yeah, you're a 7th generation Proud Boy, right? 7th generation Proud Boy of Oregon. Proud Oregonian colonizer. What's up, Ted? Do you like this ice camp that's city sanctioned?
Time's up. Next communication, please.
Will you sanction a homeless camp?
Next individual, please.
Because we're going to start a homeless
Next
camp.
individual, please.
Request of Charles
We're gonna start a homeless
Bridgecrane
camp.
Johnson.
Excuse me, this is in violation of council rules. You will be asked to leave. You are in violation of council rules. You will be asked to leave.
Bunch of uneducated cats suffering post-traumatic stress. Second generation problems at this point. Is that hilarious?
You gotta do it, Ted, not
What
them.
is the job of a leader to actually stand up for the people?
Unless you make the next
All right, excuse me, folks.
Accusing the poor kids to do your work, Portland.
Next communication, please. Carla.
739,
Thank you.
request of Charles Bridgecrane Johnson to address council regarding hashtag abolish ICE and drop 16-CR-20322, hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Good morning.
Impressive, you can say that.
It's another day in paradise.
We'll clarify that paradise thing in just a moment. My name is Charles Bridgecrane Johnson, and on the authority of the Portland Police Association, I greet you all cesspool lords. Obviously, that the president of the union representing the police, when facing facts that unfortunately your administration didn't discover on its own, we had to rely on the Oregonian. We had to rely on the freaking Oregonian to tell us that over half the people processed by Portland police are homeless. And as of yet, we know that the independent police review is doing an investigation that will go on while probably hundreds of other homeless people are pointlessly processed through the jail. And I hope that when the brilliant leadership that Darrell Turner gives the Portland Police Association is fully processed with this investigation, we'll see that it probably wasn't the best idea to throw another $1 million at them just because Permit Patty is concerned about the 911 response time when she calls to complain about black people having a barbecue. So please, you know, there are people that engage with the community well in the Portland Police Department. Help Chief Outlaw get them to the top. Be honest with officers. You know, there's many people that will tell you about racism problems in the Portland Police Department. So maybe the answer is just honesty. And when we see these mostly white men that are still the Portland Police, we can just ask them, was your election of Daryl Turner to be your president some kind of racist joke? It should be clearly put on the record right here that the guy who represents our finest is more concerned about the businesses possibly having poop in their doorways than the fact that thousands of our neighbors have nowhere else to poop. You even locked the bathroom right there at 10 o'clock. 3 armored steel jail toilets that could be used 24 hours a day, but you all locked them up. So, tots and prayers, what else is there? I don't know. We need some action, and of course, the people need to step up and guide you in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, please.
740, request of Edith Gillis to address council regarding a proposal for permanent public art, historical displays, and interactive museum.
Good morning.
Thank you. Since June 18th, I've repeatedly tried to be on the agenda to have us consider and commemorate how our past, present, and hopefully future decisions as City Council and other Portlanders can educate, inspire our city, state, nation, and world. I don't know why I've had so many repeated technical problems on my part, but I want to thank ahead our council clerk for her incredible patience and forgiveness, her grace under pressure, and her ability to keep principal detail as well as the bigger picture, so that finally I'm here, and I'm just so grateful. What I want to do is have us share a vision of what we can do in learning the lessons and blessings from our past and our current adversity, and do this to not only recognize how we are already leaders of the nation, for good or for bad, and how we can make that for the better. Imagine with me an outdoor permanent art installation, interactive museum, and a tourist and training destination. We would go from Southwest Bancroft at Moody, one lot south, along the east side of the bike path, the riverside, that is now currently the Abolish ICE encampment. After we hopefully successfully and positively succeed in the purpose of the camp. Let's have it be Monarchs, Migration, and Multnomah Camp, in which we look at not only the monarch butterflies that have traveled between Canada and Mexico, and the ways in which the city of Portland has harmed the environment, killing our milkweed and our toxicity, but now is cleaning up our Superfund and other toxic sites, and is bringing back monarch butterflies, as we're looking at this being a migratory route of salmon, of beaver, and of elk, etc. And this also being a migratory area and a gathering of peoples and ideas. We've had over 30,000 years of First Nations coming to the Portland area from east of the Mississippi, as seen through purple shell from the other side, from the Gulf of Mexico, buffalo, carved walrus tusk. And so we can show how we've had people sharing ideas, the same route that Lewis and Clark were led by a young woman on, and how we can see how we've had centuries of the United States purposely moving people unfairly, and how we can change that to respect and to stop the separation of families, and how we can right the wrongs of our past and commemorate the ideas from monarchs from Russia, Japan, Hawaii, France, Great Britain, United States, and how we can not have that kind of robber baron, railroad baron mentality here, and commemorate all the awesome, wonderful things that the City Council and the people of Portland have been doing at Multnomah Camp to show the world a better way in which we can self-govern and right injustice.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 741, request of Donelda Weiss to address council regarding comments made by a sergeant and police officers.
And Edith, thank you for acknowledging the good work of Carla and the clerk staff. They do fantastic work, so thank you for shouting that out. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm an invisible woman from a community that is overlooked I'm a low-income resident of Multnomah County. I'm here to talk about the lack of effective communication between officers and low-income people. I live in project housing. I'm a domestic violence survivor that was one of the first in a program called Divert. Divert placed me in low-income housing to ensure my safety, but in actuality, am I truly safe? I was told by a supervisor at Portland Police Department that we are short 3 bodies, and I don't have the time to deal with this, and I should be grateful that an officer was there handling the situation. The reason why I called the supervisor was because the officer was judging me by past 911 calls by saying, "Oh, I know you, I dealt with you a few months ago." The officer was talking about a domestic violence situation and acting like I was the problem caller, when in fact I'm a community leader. I am someone who sticks up for my community and values the area that I live in. I walked away from my abuser to never return. I'm raising 3 sons that I hold responsible for their actions, so when I see police officers not following the law and making discriminating statements, I will hold them responsible too. Should a mother that is trying to protect their children be ridiculed by the past domestic violence calls from a police officer? Should I be told that they are shorthanded and that I should be grateful? No, I am a resident of Multnomah County. I have the right to call the police and not be harassed by them. I have the right to ask for a supervisor and not to be told to be grateful. The police are not here just for the elite. They are here for everyone and anyone who is in need of assistance. I do not call the police often, but when I do, it is because the safety of my family or myself is in jeopardy. I am tired of feeling like I live in a community that they do not police or that they can ridicule. The stereotype of low-income communities are that they don't call the police. And how can you judge them and blame them? If you want to clean up the areas from gangs, drugs, shootings, and other kind of crimes, then train your officers to protect and serve the vulnerable. Have a community that feels safe when they call the police and not only like they are being judged. Let my son see the justice system not only work for the elite crowd. Let us teach our children that it is safe to call the police. And in order to do that, you have to ensure my community that discrimination and bullying does not exist within the police force, or that the city of Portland is trying to understand the communication gap that is happening when low-income people call 911 and the police respond. Portland Police Department needs to be reminded that they are here to protect and serve everyone. Because right now, in my community, they only see the police and their ineffective abilities to communicate and protect everyone. We too want to feel safe.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss.
Thank
and
you.
Could I, first of all, thank you for coming in and sharing your story. It's a powerful story, and it's one of perseverance, which I appreciate. I would love to be able to share that with Chief Outlaw. Could I possibly get a copy of your written statement today? Thank you.
Yeah, I can email you.
That'd be fantastic. And so, Carla, could you just give an email contact?
Yes.
Thank you for coming in. Next individual, please.
742, request of Sylvia Mitchell to address council regarding homeless issues.
Is Ms. Mitchell here today? I don't see her. Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda, Carla?
Yes, we've had a request for 748.
748, could you please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda?
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaley? Aye. Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. Commissioner Daly.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mayor. I move that the rules be suspended to take the time certain item 771 from the afternoon agenda and place it at the end of this morning's agenda. Today, there are 2 agenda items that pertain to the Office of Neighborhood Involvement. Agenda item 771 is an ordinance that authorizes the Bureau to use its new name, the Office of Community and Civic Life. Item 772 is a resolution to convene a committee that will make recommendations about the future direction of the Bureau. The new name was selected with considerable public process, which included a public survey, focus groups, and interviews of key internal stakeholders, including Commissioner Fritz and I. This name change, or a name change, has been requested by the community for years through Bureau Advisory Committee meetings, the 2008 Community Connect report, and countless conversations with community partners. in order to better reflect the scope of work that the Bureau has been charged with. I'm requesting that we proceed with this as an emergency item to prevent continued confusion about the name internally and externally. Anyone who wants to discuss the Bureau's priorities should reserve their testimony for our afternoon session when we'll be talking about the code that governs the Bureau.
Second.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. I would just like to raise one question. I'm torn because I want to obviously provide you with a courtesy as a fellow commissioner. On the other hand, I know there are people who want to testify on this item this afternoon. Is there any chance we could keep it in the afternoon and just have it be served as a first reading for the afternoon and then take up the second vote next week?
Then it takes 30 days to implement without an emergency clause. And the reason that it's happening after July 1 is when we rolled out the new name and the new branding is that we struggled to find a time certain on a date when 4 of us would be here. So I would strongly prefer not to do that. The fact is we've done the public engagement and this name change is happening. And I mean, this is a formality.
From a practical, and I'm not disagreeing, but from a practical stance, it's been my understanding that the name change had already happened, the rebranding had already happened. Does this, by having the vote, having the ordinance go into effect 30 days later, or the code change 30 days later, does that practically change anything in terms of the actual rollout of the branding?
It's just confusing, and I mean, we have, name changes of other bureaus have also happened on an emergency basis. I'm just having a real hard time understanding any reluctance here since we've engaged all of your offices on this issue.
Yeah, and to be clear, my concern is really just when people show up this afternoon and say, where is the opportunity to testify, I feel like we need an answer for them.
So this is a motion to suspend the rules, which I am allowed to make and we are allowed to do, but I need the support of all 3 of you.
Mayor, I have a question. If we agree to suspend the rules, when would we take this up to this morning?
The end of the morning session.
End of the regular agenda.
And since I'm partly responsible for this train wreck, because I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon, would it make any difference if I were to call in this afternoon for the vote on the name change? Does that change? Does that in any way make it easier to accommodate the mayor's request?
Well, it certainly would. I'd hate to ask you to do that, Commissioner.
Well, but I'm trying to reconcile 2 things where a commissioner has said that it's important we take action today, and the mayor has said that he wants to make sure people have a full opportunity to testify. Mayor, what if we were to say that I called in at 4 o'clock for the sole purpose of voting on the ordinance, and with the council, I would offer that as an amendment. I would offer that not as an amendment, but as an alternative to the motion that's made, that the council allow me to participate by phone at 4 o'clock to vote solely on council item 771.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll withdraw my motion, and I deeply appreciate your willingness to take the time to do this this afternoon.
I see a way of reconciling 2 interests here and still keeping your motion on track.
Yeah.
So, Mayor, if that's acceptable to you.
Good. Sounds like we all walk away happy, and I really appreciate your flexibility, Commissioner Fish. So, Carla, could we make that a time certain at 4 p.m.? It doesn't have to be noticed at this point.
This is just, the time certain remains at 2, Mayor. The vote will be held on 771 at 4 o'clock.
I see what you're saying. Okay, very good. That works. Thank you.
Illegal.
Could I get an opinion from legal counsel?
That's acceptable.
Thank you very much.
He works for you.
Next item, he works for all of us. Next item, please, is item number 743.
743, amend Human Resources Administrative Rule 6.04, sick leave, to increase the calendar year maximum for dependent care from 40 hours to 104 hours of accrued leave.
Colleagues, this ordinance increases the amount of sick leave an employee is eligible to use for qualifying Family Medical Leave Act, FMLA, and Oregon Family Leave Act, OFLA, dependent events. The current rule allows an employee up to 40 hours of accrued sick time to care for a qualifying dependent. That's a spouse, a child, a parent, etc. This ordinance increases the amount to 104 hours of accrued sick time to care for a qualified dependent. The change is aligned with the overall employer of choice strategies approved by the council. Supporting employees during qualifying events is important. Yeah, I hate to talk about this as qualifying events. I realize this is HR and it's legal, but what we're really talking about is allowing our employees to care for loved ones when they're experiencing a very serious or potentially terminal health event. Only allowing an employee to use 40 hours of sick time can be a hardship to the employee if they don't have sizable vacation and/or comp time banks and/or significant personal savings. This change is already in place within the PTE 17 collective bargaining agreement, as the request to increase this offering for PTE 17 members originated through collective bargaining. Changing this within the Human Resources Administrative Rule to support non-represented employees, and then also offering this to other union groups through a memorandum of agreement is appropriate to consistently apply the rule across all city employees. And with that, I'd like to pass this on to Health and Financial Benefits Manager Kathy Bless. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mayor, good morning, commissioners. There's not a lot to add to your talking points. We support and want to recognize employees who really are struggling to balance a serious health condition of a dependent, an eligible dependent, and their work, right? These are protected benefits under federal family leave laws and the Oregon Family Leave Act. And it isn't additional time, right? So employees earn sick leave as part of the benefits that they receive. And so this doesn't increase that. It just changes the way in which an employee is allowed to use the time that they accrue.
Very good. Thank you. Colleagues, any further questions? Commissioner Daly? Very good. Public testimony?
Yes, one person signed up.
Very good.
Rachel
Thanks, Kathy.
Whiteside.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am a union representative for PTE Local 17 members, and I'm here to speak in support of this ordinance. As was already mentioned, we have received this benefit through our negotiations. But while I'm here to speak in support of this, I wanted to let you know that during the course of our research for negotiations, we could not find any other public employer that placed any limitations on the use of personal sick leave for the care of dependents. I strongly support any step towards making the city an employer of choice, but I do think if you're really committed to that, you could go a step further. But I support this as a good step. We wholeheartedly support all employees receiving the benefits that we negotiated on behalf of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. A long time ago, in the 1990s, I was a chief union steward for the IBEW and a federal worker. We didn't have any limitations on sick leave. We accumulated sick leave, if I remember correctly, 8 hours a month. It was 4 hours a payday. So if you were not very ill over a long period of time and then you became ill, you were pretty well covered. You were covered with our medical, which was pretty good, but also sick leave. Any limitations on sick leave should be rational. This is not rational. 40 hours max, if I understand what you're saying.
No, Joe.
It's not rational.
It isn't 40 hours.
Please explain.
It's been increased from 40 hours to 104 hours.
Which is what people.
Well, it's 40
prefer.
hours now.
We're about to vote on which would increase the ceiling to 104 hours.
I know, but what you have now, what is it now?
It's 40, and this will increase.
That's what I said. 40 hours is irrational. That's where you are now. You want to go to 120, right?
104.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just saying to you that we support you on this one.
Okay.
That we don't have a problem, and we're pointing out to any opposition that it is illogical to put a burden on your employees over 40 hours. That's crazy. That's not good policy. You should take care of your employees. And if you're going to go step by step, I hope someday you do what the feds do. And you do it 8 hours a month. That's what I think it was 8 hours a month. 2 paydays, yeah, 8 hours a month. So anyway, I'm sorry I confused you, Commissioner. I'm not feeling that well, and
I'm easily confused these days, Joe. You're doing great.
pardon?
You're doing great, and you're supporting this.
Yeah, our argument is that it should be the most generous that you can possibly do. I know you're restrained by money, and you have lots of employees, so every time you do something, it's really expensive. But this is money, I think, well spent if you take care of your employees.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have a question for staff.
Commissioner Udaly.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi.
So just so everyone's on the same page, could you tell us how many hours people accrue of sick pay on a monthly and annual basis?
Absolutely. So they do accrue 4 hours of sick time per pay period. It's 104 hours per calendar year, and it accrues in an unlimited basis. So employees can save that time. And just also to clarify kind of the sequence of how employees use time. This ordinance obviously changes the use of access to sick leave accrual for dependents from 40 hours to 104. So that's initially right out of the gate. After that 104 hours, the employee can move to access their vacation time and their comp time. And if they're out of all other paid time, they circle back to being able to use their sick time. And then if they exhaust all time, they would also be eligible to apply for catastrophic leave. So we have a number of different ways in which we will continue to support the employee through the process.
So I think I understood what you just said, but if they can circle back and use the rest of their sick time, why wouldn't we just allow, do we let them roll over sick time in perpetuity? They get to
Yes.
keep all of it? Okay.
They do.
So why wouldn't we allow them to just exhaust the sick time up front and then move on?
That would be an amendment to the ordinance, certainly.
But Kathy, it's not just an amendment to the ordinance. This is what was bargained at the table.
It was, oh, yeah, that was my next.
So we can
This is what was right.
technically amend any ordinance, but I would be reluctant to get in the middle of collective bargaining once we've struck a contract.
Sure.
Right, and this was collectively bargained through the PTE contract. This ordinance allows us to offer it to all the other unions through a memorandum of understanding, and it allows us to roll this out to non-represented employees. So we can absolutely talk with council about how to move forward in later negotiations, but at this point in time, this is the ordinance that's here today.
Great, yeah, and I'm not suggesting an amendment, I just thought there were some legitimate questions raised. and I
What was
wanted
the
get
answer
them
to
answered.
Commissioner Udaly's question about rolling over? How much can be rolled over for how long?
You can roll over on an unlimited basis for your career.
Now, Kathy, I have to say, having represented labor organizations 25 years ago, and you know, Joe Walsh was talking about his experience, you know, with the IBEW. It wasn't that long ago that the standard clause that I'm familiar with was use it or lose it. And there were strict limits on rollover. So what we've done is we've now boosted by about 2.5 times the amount that you can accrue and use in a calendar year, and we put no limits on rollover. So I think we should be pretty proud of that, and as someone dealing with a major health challenge, I think the more freedom, the more flexibility we give our workforce to be able to deal with health issues away from work safely so they don't have to come to work when they're not feeling well is important. And I think there's been a suggestion that we may want to even enhance this benefit the next time we take it up. I'd be interested in knowing how other cities and counties have addressed it. But, you know, 25 years ago, the standard was not even close to this. And there was a use it, you lose it in a lot of the contracts that I had a hand in. And so I think we're on our way to becoming a model employer. Maybe we need to do better, but I think we should celebrate that this is a big step forward. And this was achieved at the bargaining table through demands made by our labor partners. So credit to them.
Correct, correct. And protected leave wasn't really in place up to 25 years ago either.
That's correct.
So there's been a lot of enhancements over time.
Shift in thinking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Please call the roll, Carla.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Thanks for your hard work on this. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next item, 744, please.
Amend human
Excuse me.
resources.
This is in violation of council rules. You heard the rules. You're going to be asked to leave if you do not stop.
She wants to be asked to leave.
I know. One moment.
744, amend human resources, admin rule 6.03.
Excuse me. We're gonna take a 3-minute recess.
I think it's time that we get ICE out of Portland, don't you, Mayor?
If we're in recess, would you make a decision?
Carla?
Contract negotiations, the union asked us to explore the option of increasing their vacation accrual. The city instead offered to create a committee to look into the vacation leave accruals for the city as compared to other local public sector employers. The committee came to find that the city of Portland was not competitive in regard to their current vacation accrual and made 3 specific changes, 3 specific suggestions for change that they wanted us to take up. Our BHR director, Cyrilda Summers McGee, endorsed one of those suggestions and is here to present that today. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. For the record, my name is Cyrilda Summers. Can you hear me? It's on.
Good. Okay, thanks.
For the record, my name is Cyrilda Summers McGee, and I'm the Bureau Director for Human Resources. Thank you for allowing us to speak before you today. We are here for a historic moment. Never in the history of the city of Portland has a committee of this nature come together and made this kind of a recommendation. The committee was comprised of union leadership and employees to explore the City of Portland's current vacation accrual rate and determine if it was competitive or if it was not competitive and make a recommendation to me. They came together, and I have to say, there was suspicion. Folks didn't know if this was a real thing, and yet they still showed up. They put their thinking caps on. They went into deep research to determine what the market would suggest our vacation accrual rate should be to remain competitive in the City of Portland. And they came up with three, not one, but three recommendations, depending on how competitive we want it to be in the market. Do we want to be above the market, meet the market, or just beneath what the market would suggest our vacation accrual level should have been? And it was a beautiful recommendation. It was so well thought out, which you all have the data on. It was so well thought out that I was immediately convinced that the medium, the midpoint, the more moderate accrual rate was in the best interest of the city to allow us to remain competitive, especially as we continue to compete both inside the city as well as with external regional competitors for talent. So what you have before you is in Exhibit A, my recommendation, which is a adjustment to the vacation accrual table for the HRAR 6.03. Any questions?
Very good.
Before we do public comment?
Could you just summarize what the changes are?
So the change generally is, the largest change happens when a new hire comes on board for the City of Portland. Currently, we max out at 80 hours per year that you can accrue towards when you first start at the City of Portland. And you are not able to accrue at a higher rate for 4 years. Well, that's not as progressive as the market would suggest it should be. In today's market, employees move around from employer to employer more frequently than 4 to 8 to 12 years. And so in order for us to incent them to stick around, we are allowing them to accrue at less of a stair step every 4 years to each year they can accrue at a higher rate. So we initially bumped up the maximum accrual rate at year 1 to 112 hours, up from 80 hours. And then it increases 4 hours every subsequent year that they're here, which is a significant change and shift from where we were historically, which is every 4 years you would receive approximately 6 hours more.
If I could just chime in on this. One of the things that really struck me about this was how non-competitive we were for new employees. And particularly for our departments that have technical support, engineering support, specific skills, we just weren't competitive with the private sector, and that was clearly impacting our ability to recruit quality talent. And so I think your thinking on this and the logic you used is spot on.
Absolutely.
So we bumped up the accrual that you can, in the early years, and you said instead of, and we've used what's that metaphor, a staircase?
Right. Every 4 years, a step up.
I see.
Now it's just a gradual incline each year.
I see, good.
Yep.
Okay.
And we weren't just not competitive with the for-profit sector. We also weren't competitive with Metro,
Right.
the state,
Yeah, that's
TriMet.
That's fair.
One of the ways that we knew we weren't competitive is that we were constantly in the searches that we were involved with, being asked to approve a greater accrual.
Exactly.
For candidates that expect, where the candidate was saying the industry standard is X, you're at a step, and we had to, in effect, give that additional benefit in order to land the candidate of choice.
That's exactly right. We were asking for exceptions with the bulk of our hires.
Okay, good.
Very good. Any questions before we move this on to public
I would like to
testimony?
ask if we can
Yes.
move this to an emergency ordinance for a vote today, since we have so many of our union representatives before us.
Well, and you want to implement this on an expeditious basis, is that correct?
It will be implemented in January. So we have to actually change the entire SAP system. We need a little bit of runway to get the system adjusted so that the accrual rate is impacting the entire city.
Happy to do. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll on the motion.
You should state on the record the
emergency so it can be recited in the ordinance?
The emergency is that it allows us to begin the accrual process sooner, speed up the administrative part, and frankly, not insignificantly, the partners who worked very hard to help craft this proposal are here in the room today, and I'd like to see them actually see their work come to fruition.
I think we have a second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The amendment's adopted. Any further questions before we move to public testimony? Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Sorry, we have 4 people signed up.
Very good.
The first 3 are Rachel Whiteside, Elliot Levin, and Paul Cohn. Come on up.
Good morning again.
Good morning
It's good to
again.
see you. Good morning.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Rachel Whiteside, and I'm union representative for PTE Local 17 members here at the City of Portland. And in the interest of disclosure, I sat on the work group that made the recommendation to the HR director. It is my opinion that if it weren't for my Local 17 members, we wouldn't be here before you today with the progressive recommendation that you took a look at. But I also want to fully acknowledge it required the participation of our union brothers and sisters, many of which I've seen in the audience today. Thank you very much. And a commitment.
Rachel, why don't you ask them to stand so we can just acknowledge them, the people that were involved in this?
And I would also like to acknowledge the commitment by the city. This was a true labor management partnership, and if it weren't for the committed staff of the Labor Relations Department, we wouldn't be here as well either. Thank you, Jamal. Sarah. This vacation leave work group was a unique labor management partnership, as Cyrilda mentioned, formed to examine a specific issue outside of the formal bargaining process. All parties entered with no preconceived notion of what our final outcome would be, but with a willingness to define our shared interests and work from there. We were able to review data and discuss concepts without the carefully choreographed dance that you have in a formal negotiation. And I believe that this latitude allowed us to present the sweeping changes that are before you today, and that this recommendation will reposition the city of Portland within the marketplace, and it demonstrates a deliberate intent to be an employer of choice, which I mentioned earlier. It's a real passion of mine.
I want you to keep mentioning that. I think it's great.
So I am in full support of this recommendation. I truly consider this process to be a genuine success, and I hope that council will support similar endeavors in the future. Maybe we can take up that sick leave usage issue. Thank you for your time. You've already voted yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Wheeler, members of council, my name is Elliot Levin. I'm the Director of Research and Oregon Legislative Advocate for Professional and Technical Employees Local 17, and I wish to speak in favor of the ordinance before you this morning. In addition to improving the work-life balance and job satisfaction of current employees, we believe that this ordinance is a major step forward in attracting the next generation of talent to work for the city. The engineers, planners, technicians, and information technology professionals that we represent have many employment options in the current labor market. And in recent years, we have seen increasing competition for top-tier talent in many specialized fields. This morning's ordinance will make the city of Portland significantly more attractive in this competitive labor market. We find that younger employees place a high value on quality of life aspects of their job. The vacation is a significant factor in comparing job offers. Increasing the early years of the vacation accrual table to be highly competitive with comparable local public employers will help the city attract the next generation of talent into the workforce. Additionally, mid-career professionals are often taking considerable loss in vacation to change jobs and work for the city, but we believe that this ordinance will help to ease the transition considerably, specifically by increasing the accrual rates at each year of employment rather than in 5-year blocks. New City of Portland employees can expect to return to previous levels of vacation accrual faster under this new system. This removes a significant barrier to attracting the kind of experts and skilled professionals that Portland will need as the city continues to grow. By embracing this forward-thinking model for vacation accrual, I wish to thank City Council, and I look forward to seeing the positive impact of today's action on the future workforce. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, members of council. My name is Paul Cohn, and I'm the president of the Portland chapter of PT 17. I'm also a city employee with 15 years of experience in several bureaus. I just want to also, before I read the rest of my remarks, acknowledge Amy Bowles, who championed this for us at the bargaining table last year and has now moved on to be one of our executive directors for the union in Seattle. So thank you, Amy. As a representative of nearly 900 engineers, planners, technicians, IT specialists like myself, and other professionals represented by PT Local 17, I want to speak today in favor of the vacation leave ordinance before you. For years, Local 17 has heard that increasing vacation leave accrual is a primary priority for our members. We polled our members prior to bargaining. About 50% of them responded, which was an amazing response, and this was #1 on their list. As we have spoken to members across the city, we've heard several repeated themes that fit with a changing workforce and assumptions about the relationship between work, life, and family. As employees across the economy work seemingly longer hours and families are stretched to find time together, we continuously hear that work-life balance is a crucial concern for our members. Workers often struggle to find time during busy work weeks for friends, family, and personal pursuits. More vacation time will allow our members to be more connected to their loved ones and communities and strengthens our society. Rest time away from work is important for the morale and effectiveness of a workforce. After time away, employees come back to work more productive and effectively. Additionally, medical research has shown that employees have access to adequate vacation leave have lower rates of heart disease, depression, stress, and high blood pressure. In fact, there was one study that showed a 31% decrease in death from coronary heart disease amongst men who took regular vacations. And while many of our members are fortunate enough to take leave for leisure activities, we find that our members increasingly need to use vacation time, this is something that Kathy Bless alluded to care for children, spouses, and parents, sometimes if those folks have health care concerns. Vacation leave is no longer only used for travel and relaxation, but it's become a crucial element of family safety nets, and employees rely on this benefit to be able to provide care without making burdensome financial sacrifices. As both child care and elder care becomes ever more present part of workers' responsibilities, vacation leave allows employees to bridge the gap between work, financial, and family responsibilities. By adopting this ordinance, you will have a tangible impact upon thousands of city employees' satisfaction with their jobs, their quality of life, their ability to care for their families. Our members take pride in their work and the professional services they provide for the people of Portland, and the benefits we hope you extend today will significantly improve their ability to provide these services. So we thank you for your support.
Thank you. Thanks all three of you. We really appreciate it.
The last person who signed up is Ted Bryan.
Very good. And Mr. Walsh, did you want to come up as well?
Mr. Mayor, is it okay if I come as well?
Yeah, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ted Bryan. I'm a representative of Laborers Local 483. I was also a member of the Vacation Leave Work Group. And the first thing I'd like to mention today, I'd just like to underscore the remarks that Director Summers-McGee made about the process that the work group went through. It was really refreshing for all of us to actually go through a process where it felt like a collaborative effort. It was fact-based, and it didn't involve the sort of usual song and dance that we sometimes find in bargaining. I think right now at this point in history, when there's really an attack on the rights of public sector workers across the country, it's important that the city of Portland really be leading in terms of its labor relations. And I think we're seeing a big change in terms of the relationship between labor and management here. And that's really encouraging for us. I think the logic of the ordinance is impeccable. It's a real substantial commitment by the city to the health and well-being of our members, and they appreciate that. And I just wanted to say I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the hundreds of so-called casual and seasonal employees who work for the city, who are out there maintaining our parks and community centers, who unfortunately at this point, many of them don't have vacation leave or paid holidays. But I just want to say that in the past few years, we've seen council make real commitments to those workers as well. And so I'm hoping that going forward, that the city will actually maintain its commitments to all of its employees, which is what we're seeing now. And I just hope that that spirit continues in the future. So
thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. I'm Joanne Hardesty, and I also just want to echo what an incredible model the City Council and Human Resources is in a union government partnership. I think it's really wonderful to see outside of a bargaining process that we were able to actually help employees spend more time with their families and have more downtime, because as we know, you have to check out sometime. And I just want to say, Mayor Wheeler, this is the second time in 2 days that I've complimented you on something, and so I want the record to reflect that.
Thank
Joanne,
you, Joanne.
why don't you put on the record, then, therefore, the bureaus that you're seeking?
I will take whatever the mayor would like to give me.
Very good. Thank you, and thank you
you
for coming and expressing that. And I know people appreciate hearing that, so thank you. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Again, for the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We love labor unions. We also love employees. And employees that work for the city, we love especially. Thank you very much. Because we know how hard they work. We know how dedicated they are. In the corporate world, if you get called up at 3 o'clock in the morning to come into work, they would laugh. Wouldn't happen. I remember being called up at 3 o'clock in the morning on the federal level, then had come in to work because Long Beach Naval Shipyard was under a storm and we had to go in. So I have some appreciation of what your employees do. And it's, again, for Joanne and I to compliment you twice in one day, it's going to ruin our reputations.
We'll survive.
I looked at the agenda and I'm not too sure there's anything that I'm really going to criticize you on today. Well, maybe there's one thing. We applaud you. We criticize you often. We get thrown out a lot.
Not me.
Not Joanne. When I say we, I mean Individuals for Justice. But congratulations. If you pass this is kind of cool. And you should be proud of it. And when we yell at you, it's on an issue and it's not personal, even though it sounds personal sometimes. And that's just our inability to make it issue-oriented. It's our problem, not yours. So thanks again for this. Thanks to the union. Thanks to what I used to call IRO, or Human Resources. It seems that everybody worked together on this and came up with a really good solution. And I'm really proud to sit next to Joanne on this one and be on the same page, which is not that unusual. So thanks again. And write it down twice.
Twice.
History is made here today. Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Was there anybody else, Carla?
That was all who had signed up.
All right, very good. Colleagues, anything else before we move to a vote, since we have amended? Oh, I'm sorry. Good. Anything else, Director Summers McGee?
I just need to sit here for the vote, yes?
If you would like to.
Okay.
Good. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to thank both management and labor for coming together and taking a good look at this very important issue. I think as many of you testified, it's increasingly difficult today to achieve that right work-life balance. And many of us are always seeking to find that, and it's harder to find with all the competing demands, including care for dependents. So I think increasing our accrual is the right thing to do, and I'm very pleased to be able to support this and say aye.
You, Daly?
Well, I would just like to thank Director Summers McGee for her hard work. It's been a pleasure working for you, and I'm really pleased with the direction that we're moving in. And thank our union, our staff, and our union members as well. Aye.
Fish.
I heard three things today that really warmed my heart. I heard our labor partners talk about meaningful, measurable progress towards becoming an employer of choice. And we want to be an employer of choice because it means we're recruiting the best talent and we're retaining the best talent. And so there's some things we have to do to get there, but this is a big step in that direction. Second thing I heard was that a number of people said that this reflects a change in the relationship between labor and management. That's very important because we can disagree on issues from time to time, but we are at our best when we are operating as true partners for the benefit of the most important commodity and precious resource we have in this city, which is the workers who do the work. So I was pleased to hear that. And then on the question of work-life balance that Dan alluded to, you know, it's been important to me because, you know, I have a family and a young kid who's active and I want to be present for his milestones. But it became even more important when I had a serious health challenge and I had to begin to rethink some of my priorities and make sure that I was getting the rest I needed and the downtime in order to be effective in my day job. So this is a win-win-win. I'm very pleased today to vote aye.
Wheeler.
This is about respect. And this is about acknowledgement. It's about respecting and acknowledging the people who do the work for the residents of this city. It is hard work, it is tireless work, it is often thankless work, and it's mostly behind the scenes. And I want to share a story, then I want to just share a thought. First, the story. I have never liked the negative stereotypes about public employees, and I think they're largely cheap shots at people who care about this community. They see the value in this community, they see the potential in this community, and they're actually wanting to work hard to serve the community. Services is the thread that holds all of our folks together. And the story I want to share is one I've told before. I remember seeing a public employee on his belly in a deep puddle of mud, trying to clear a storm drain with his bare hands in the winter. And I remember driving by, just watching this guy in the mud, in the water, and I remember thinking, that is incredible dedication. In any field, that would be defined as incredible dedication. And that was a real moment of pride for me, just to see that level of commitment and dedication. Now, in terms of what I want to say, Cyrilda, when you were hired, one of the conversations we had was about changing the dynamic in this city. And we talked about how it was going to be hard to change the dynamic. And we talked about the employer of choice model, and we talked about labor relations. And you and I collectively had heard a lot of positive, but we'd also heard some negative about collective bargaining in particular, but just generally some of the disconnect between management and our rank and file employees. And when I hear labor leaders and I hear others from the community come up and they talk about how you and your labor relations team in a relatively short period of time are already changing that culture and are already building that trust even outside of bargaining, that's exactly what you were brought on to do. And from my estimation, you're doing really, really well. So keep it up. I think this is a great proposal. It's a data-driven proposal. It's based on fact. It works within the confines of finite resources, but it's also the right thing to do both in terms of compassion, and it's the right thing to do in terms of recruiting and retention. And perhaps most importantly of all, it's just the right thing to do to say that we respect the people who work for the city of Portland, and we support them in the work that they do. So I vote aye, and the ordinance is adopted. Thanks for your hard work.
Thank you.
Carla, could you read item 745? It's going to be moved, but if you could read it for the record, please.
745, initiate foreclosure action on 4 properties for the collection of delinquent city liens placed against the properties.
Colleagues, at the request of the auditor, I believe this is being moved to August 8th, 2018 at 9:45 a.m. time certain. Again, that's August 8th, 9:45 a.m. time certain. Item number 746, please.
Authorize purchase of certain real property located at 5827 Northeast Prescott Street at a price and closing costs not to exceed $558,000 to develop new affordable housing.
Colleagues, this
Mayor,
is...
do you want
Commissioner Fish?
747 read in connection with this? As it says 15 minutes for both.
Yeah, let's do that. Good call. Michelle, is there any reason why I shouldn't read 747? Let's go ahead and read 747 as well. Thanks, Commissioner Fish.
Authorize Portland Housing Bureau to assume certain contracts that will be assigned to the Housing Bureau in connection with acquisition of real property located at 5827 Northeast Prescott Street.
So, colleagues, this is yet another property associated with the Portland Housing Bond. The Housing Bond promised 1,300 units of permanently affordable housing, and it promised that that would be created within a 5 to 7 year time frame of passage. In the first year and a half, we have approximately half of the promised units either already purchased or in processed in both new developments and acquisitions of existing buildings. This acquisition represents the fourth project identified under the Housing Bond. The Portland Housing Bureau is excited to bring this ordinance before the council today as another step towards meeting the goals of the Housing Bond. The acquisition of this property will create 50 to 75 new units of affordable housing in the Cully neighborhood, a neighborhood on the front lines of gentrification and displacement. Future development of this property will create an additional family-sized units for households earning 0 to 30% AMI, and as well as providing more supportive housing units to the city in coordination with the Joint Office of Homeless Services. And just colloquially, 0 to 30%, that is housing with support services for the people we are seeing on the streets, people who are chronically homeless, people who are in crisis. This not only allows them access to housing that they can afford and be successful in, it will also provide opportunities for services. PHB and its partner, Home Forward, will begin planning for programming and services for this property by the end of this year, the end of 2018, which will inform future development goals. With that, I'll pass it over to Housing Director Shannon Callahan. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. I am Shannon Callahan from the Portland Housing Bureau. And as the Mayor said, we are here today with the fourth identified Portland Housing Bond property and our second property acquired for new development. This property is located in the Cully neighborhood, and today I am joined by one of our 5 Bond Oversight Committee members, Todd Struble of Apano, the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. And
by the way, I'm not saying he's the best committee member, but I think he was my appointee.
I believe he was indeed your appointee.
Thank you very much.
And Cameron Harrington, a member of the Portland Housing Advisory Commission and of Living Cully. Just for a little bit of grounding about the Portland Housing Bond's production and policy goals, we are seeking to create or acquire 1,300 permanently affordable homes, 600 of which, as the Mayor indicated, will be deeply affordable, 300 of which will be set aside for supportive housing, and 650 of which will be sized for families, 2 bedrooms or even larger. Under the Housing Bond, we are seeking to create new housing and well as prevent displacement. That's why we're both investing in properties for new development as well as acquiring existing buildings. We are prioritizing communities of color, families and households facing homelessness or displacement. We are investing in citywide in areas of high opportunity and areas at high risk of gentrification. As the Mayor said, we are particularly excited about the opportunity to purchase this property in the Cully neighborhood, an area of rich diversity and a strong sense of community, and unfortunately also with a high risk of gentrification. This is one of the target neighborhoods that we specifically sought out and are very pleased that we were able to acquire this property. This particular property is being purchased for $50,000. It can hold as many as
500.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
50,000. Wow, that's a really good
I'd
deal.
like in on that deal.
Well done, well done.
I don't know if the owner knew that or not. $500,000, which is still a very, very good price for this property. It can be developed for as many as 75 units, but at the present moment, we're counting between 50 and 75 because we don't know the mix of the bedroom size or family size until we start to work first with our bond oversight community and with our community in general. If you're not familiar with this property, it is located on numerous transit lines and in close proximity to a grocery store, which is a huge amenity for families who may be transit dependent as they look to move into a new neighborhood. As a reminder, for all bond acquisitions, they are put through an analysis of our adopted policy framework. We assess the property or buildings with on-site site visits, and then we have a formal review process as adopted by our Bond Oversight Committee before we make a formal offer to purchase. This particular property began that process last December. We moved through a formal review committee in January, started our due diligence, and are now here before you to ask for your approval on the purchase of the property. And just before I turn it over to Todd, I'd like to just show you a brief map of the 4 identified properties. This property, if approved, would join a property in East Portland we just purchased a few weeks ago, and also our 30th and Powell new development site, which we're beginning pre-development activities on presently, and then of course our first bond purchase in Northeast Portland, the 263 unit Ellington Apartments. And with that, I'll turn it over to Todd.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Todd Struble, and I serve on the Housing Bond Oversight Committee. In that role, our goal is to hold PHB accountable to the stakeholder advisory committee that created a framework for this bond. With that in mind, we believe this project absolutely follows that framework. It's a good investment, it's a wise long-term investment, and we know that it's going to be supporting the folks that are experiencing homelessness and families that are really vulnerable to displacement. So with that, I think it's an excellent investment. And I'd also just like to also point out that it's in an area where the city has focused resources. It's close to a neighborhood prosperity initiative, and there's many nonprofit organizations that are doing work on the ground that will continue to support this investment as it goes forward. So with that, I'd like to say thank you and endorse this. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Cameron Harrington. I'm here speaking on behalf of the Living Cully Partners and to express our support for this acquisition. As you've heard, this property is in an excellent location in one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the state of Oregon. It's across the street from a full-service grocery store. It's within easy walking distance of 2 elementary schools, of the new Cunnamux Park that opened a couple of years ago. It has easy transit access, so it's a great location for families and other low-income folks who are in need of stable, affordable homes. I wanted to share a few words about our involvement in the bond and some experiences we've had in the Cully neighborhood. So Living Cully organizes a grassroots group called the Cully Housing Action Team that knocked on over 1,100 doors in our neighborhood to support the bond campaign in 2016. And so we were very gratified that voters approved these funds, and then we're excited that this is resulting in new affordable homes in our neighborhood. As part of that campaign in 2016, a number of families participated in door knocking who lived at the Normandy Apartments in Cully on Northeast Killingsworth, which those families lost their homes last year when an investor purchased the building and doubled their rents. But 5 of those families were able to find stable, affordable homes at the Ellington apartment building, which was the first bond acquisition. And so I thought that was an important connection to make here between folks who are involved in grassroots affordable housing advocacy on the ground, who themselves are facing a crisis in their own housing, and this bond has directly supported them in finding permanent, stable, affordable homes. But that does lead me to note that the bond and all of the acquisitions that are being made with it are, as I know you have all noted, are one piece of the affordable housing puzzle in Portland. And so building on this momentum in the Cully neighborhood, we're excited that the manufactured housing park zoning proposal is coming to council very soon, which will prevent the displacement of over 3,000 households in this city, which is more than twice as many as will be served by the bond itself. So those two things going hand in hand make a lot of sense. We encourage you to take up a vote on that zoning proposal as soon as possible so that more property owners of manufactured housing parks do not file permits to redevelop before the zone is changed. We're very concerned about that. And then the last piece that I wanted to mention for the Cully neighborhood is our ongoing work led by Hacienda Community Development to develop affordable housing on the former Sugar Shack property that Living Cully was able to acquire in 2015. This bond acquisition is very exciting news for our neighborhood, and we are very eager to work with the council and with the Housing Bureau to keep that momentum rolling into the next steps for preserving affordable housing, building new affordable housing, and preventing displacement in the Cully neighborhood and across the city.
Thank you. And I
have a couple questions.
Commissioner Fish first. Go
So,
ahead.
Director Callahan, thank you very much for your presentation. The materials that you gave us say that there's, we're planning up to, that's quote, up to 13 units of permanent supportive housing. So they'll call that the ceiling. What's the floor?
Oh, Commissioner, I don't know that I could say that there is a floor. We're looking to maximize our supportive housing wherever we can in any particular project. Each project would have supportive housing contained in it, but I think it depends on the mix of whether it's focused on families or single. So I would not be able to proffer an answer for you on that right now.
So in the context, the council has adopted with the county a very big goal of 2,000 units of permanent supportive housing.
Yes.
Between now and 2027. When you come back with a development proposal, I'll be keenly interested in where we land in those numbers. And the second thing is, we had prior testimony about the Sugar Shack.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's wonderful that we're acquiring land in Cully, in effect, land banking and allowing us to do some future development. But the Sugar Shack development site has been a top priority of this council for a long time, and it goes back to when there was a strip club across from Hacienda's housing and really a tremendous blight in a neighborhood that was struggling to move forward. Fortunately, the land and the building has been acquired by a number of partners, including Hacienda. But there's a gap in their financing, and one of the reasons there's a gap is the Trump tax overhaul plan has had a negative impact on our tax credit market. And this is not the first time in the last 10 years we've seen the value of tax credits come down a little bit. What assurances can you give council that we continue to be committed to helping our partners close the gap on Sugar Shack and move forward?
So, Commissioner, I myself and the mayor, staff, and mayor have all had conversations with Hacienda. I think we'd all like to find a path forward to develop the Sugar Shack. We did have initial conversations with them about bond resources, and I believe it was not the right fit for the property with the current bond restrictions. But we are releasing a notice of funds availability later this month with the direction of the mayor, and we believe that that would be a top contender for those resources.
Well, we're seeing a significant inflation in the cost of building things, so that's a big cost driver. We're seeing a drop in the value of tax credits, which makes these things harder to pencil out. But Mayor, I hope that when the NOFA issues and we get a chance to look at ways we can help our friends in Cully, that we're not shy about using HIF resources, other GAP resources. It is vitally important that we jumpstart this development, and it's been a council priority for a very long time, and I would be very aggrieved if this thing stalled out.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
I think you had it on the graphic, but how many 2-, 3-bedroom units will there be?
We don't know yet. In terms of family-size units with the bond, half of the bond resources are to develop family-size units. With this particular property, we have not yet had a dialogue about what we think the property would be best suited for. And our first stop for that is our Bond Oversight Committee, looking at the property itself, the makeup of the neighborhood, and the other goals that we have under the bond. Each property, we need to make sure that we're meeting our overarching goals when we reach 1,300 or greater units, that we do hit all of the other properties. Each does not look the same as each other, meaning some are slated for more slated for families. Some we look at, we'll be looking at for more individuals or couples who may live in a smaller unit and may need more supportive housing services. So we don't yet know, but we're looking forward to having that dialogue with our Bond Oversight Committee and the Cully neighborhood as well.
So I guess similar to Commissioner Fish's discussion he just had about permanent supportive housing, you know, what's the floor, what's the ceiling? Is it safe to say there will be some family-size units in this development? Or
I would imagine that this would be a building that we would be looking to prioritize family-size units. But again, as I have not had that conversation with our Bond Oversight Committee, I would not be able to definitively say that or not. But yes, I think that would be our sense, is that it would be a very good site for family-size units.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Does that complete your presentation, Shannon?
It does, ma'am.
Very good. Public testimony on this, Carla?
Yes, we have 3 people signed up. Please come on up. Are Charles Bridgecrane Johnson, David Sweet, and Edith Gillis.
And just as a reminder, people, this is both for 746 and 747, if you'd like to testify. Good morning.
Good morning. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is David Sweet. I'm the Land Use Transportation Chair for the Cully Association of Neighbors. And I'm remiss in not handing you our inclusive Cully policy, which was adopted 2.5 years ago. And it's our attempt as a neighborhood association to address the problem of displacement in Cully. I want to read you just a small portion of that. We value the economic and ethnic diversity of our neighborhood. We are aware that the economic forces that threaten that diversity by displacing many of us. We acknowledge that people of color face higher barriers to finding housing and employment and are particularly vulnerable to displacement. Improvements to our parks and transportation infrastructure and the growth and enhancement of our commercial areas, while needed and desirable, are making our neighborhood more attractive to developers, investors, and home buyers, driving up prices and exacerbating displacement. It is our vision that improvements in Cully will benefit existing residents and encourage them to remain in the neighborhood as we also welcome and make room for new residents. It is because of that we do encourage the development of permanently affordable housing in Cully, and we're delighted to learn of this new development that will join the more than 300 units of affordable housing owned by Hacienda CDC, the many more development units that will be developed on the property formerly known as the Sugar Shack, the 59 units that's being built by a local developer in conjunction with NEA and NARA on 42nd Avenue. This is very exciting for us, and one thing we'd like to make sure of is that these affordable units do benefit people who in Cully who are at risk of displacement. First and foremost, and we hope that the Housing Bureau can find a way to reach out to folks like the residents of the Normandy apartments who are being displaced by economic forces, and we don't want to lose those folks from our neighborhood. So we urge your support for this acquisition. thank you to the Housing Bureau for looking in Cully, and please help us prevent displacement of our current residents. Thanks.
So I have to say, I've seen this statement before, and I love the Cully neighborhood, and this statement for me is a really excellent, broad statement that should be applied citywide. And there's a couple of things I want to specifically call out, and I've noted this before. It's very positive. It starts out by expressing a mutual pride in the neighborhood and acknowledging the uniqueness of the neighborhood, and then going on to talk about specific action steps in terms of how to make the neighborhood or keep the neighborhood accessible and affordable and vibrant and safe and all of the things that we want to see for the city at large. And I just really appreciate the way that you and your neighbors have come together in what I think is a really positive and productive way. And you've worked with the City Council and you've worked with the Housing Bureau to help make your vision a reality. We need more of this. At times when we're struggling with the growing pains in our city and struggling with a lot of social problems, I appreciate the fact you guys push your chair into the table, you provide concrete solutions, you provide a positive vision, and you put your time and your energy and your money behind it. And we're proud to be your partners in Cully. So thank you, and please take that back to the Cully neighborhood.
I certainly
really
will.
Proud of the relationship that we've developed.
Certainly will.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the many other very active and able community organizations at work in Cully that our neighborhood association works with and in support of. They're the ones pulling the laboring oars here. We'll support as best we can. But we really appreciate the Living Cully partners, Verdi, Hacienda, Habitat for Humanity, NEA, and all the others who are doing such great work in Cully.
Well, what's going on in Cully, I hope, is contagious.
Yeah.
It's just a really positive example of the community coming together to make the community work. And I'm proud to be mayor and have a community like Cully. So please call on me often. This is just one more example of what I think is the great work we can do together. Thank you. Good morning.
Hello, my name is Edith Gillis, and I would like 50 to 75% of this property to be for those that are below the poverty line. I'd like us to have a diversity of types of units, studio apartments, dorm style, single rooms with a shared living space, multiple bedrooms, 4 to 6 bedrooms per unit with multiple space for multiple beds. I'd like it to be ADA, chemical sensitive, sensory adaptive, with food growing on the eaves and the green roof and area, and I'd like to have composting toilets as an option. To pay for these extra expenses, I'd like to take it from the police budget as part of preventing crime and cop calls.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And part of the motivation behind the housing bond and this particular property in Cully is because we need to try even harder to have a city where there'll be no more Karen Lee Batts killed by us. It was a very rough introduction for the mayor and his term that the city and the county and a particular judge and a particular nonprofit housing corporation murdered Karen Lee Batts by hypothermia in a parking garage on 10th. Fortunately, Commissioner Fitz did mention supportive housing, but having spent time visiting people at Northwest Towers, out on Beaverton-Hillsdale Highway where there's another unit, the city needs to be clear and frequently explicit about what is the safety net for people that are on disability, struggling with mental illness, possibly causing uncomfortable situations for their neighbors also in public and subsidized housing. How are we going to have a vision zero so that none of these people get evicted? Because that's actually what happens to an unknown percentage of our public housing residents. They're sent there and it turns out to be a death camp. There used to be a woman who testified here frequently. She killed herself in Northwest Tower. When people go to a publicly funded university, part of the budget is set aside to do a crime report. should be a general livability report, but at least a crime report. But we don't talk honestly and openly about the challenges of keeping people struggling with mental illness and compounding that with the situation of living in public subsidized housing alive. So when we look at the great decision that's happening here in Cully, the need to move this project forward as fast as possible, we also need to not rush past the issues of how we will eventually build a system where almost no one has to get evicted from these. You know, we want to see some people are, when they get housed and stabilized, are going to be able to trend to lives that are more richer and more productive. But challenges come up, and we need to have a solution other than saying, oh, this crazy person didn't pay their $138 rent. Let's go to court and put them in eviction. There's got to be a better way. We have to talk about it often and clearly and communicate it to the people that are in need and struggling with those issues. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you for correctly mentioning that. And I'm pleased not only with the direction this project is taking in terms of support. The NOFA that the housing director mentioned earlier is actually going to be the first NOFA of its kind that's going to combine both the infrastructure and the housing with the mental health services needed to help people be successful in that housing and stay in that housing and be healthy in that housing. So I just want to acknowledge that I agree with what you're saying, and that is in fact the direction that we are moving, and we're moving there aggressively. So thank you for pointing that out.
Exactly right. We're also seeing progress with Cascadia's Garlington development.
They're great,
and,
yeah, absolutely.
But people need to know to see where they can see this in black and white, like portland.oregon.gov/smart, which y'all fixed. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks all three of you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Watchdog. I do like this project. I like your price on this project. I like the fact you're going for the new development. Again, when we're talking the permanent supportive housing, I want it to be made an amenity in any public housing facility, but I also want to have a clear understanding, and it's the most important amenity for mental health and addiction services, must be included in every project. That means when we're building these buildings, we need to develop a certain amount of space to be utilized for that specifically. Then we need to develop ways to fund the resources for that amenity to be ongoing and geographically located through the communities, and also working alongside the Unity Center in being advised from the professionals on what they think would be advantageous in these buildings, and to work alongside of them. If something becomes very serious, they go to the Unity Center. How do we transport them to the Unity Center? This all needs to be included in the plan. Again, I prefer family-size units. As you know, I prefer the 0 to 30% MFI. But again, I like this project. I like everything I see. I want to see the number of units expanded. That will stabilize overall rents, and that's what you're doing here. You're building more units, not buying season units, and just holding those units and not developing out. So I like everything on this project. Again, stay focused on the 0 to 30%. In my understanding, permanent supportive housing could be implemented into all these buildings for every unit if the service is needed as an amenity. Anyone should be able to use those services. Anyone should be able to use that amenity. Anyone should have a right in that building. If they are having any type of a mental health crisis, feel free to go to the professionals. We provided that amenity in this building and work alongside our professionals. That is an amenity that needs to be included. That's never been done in the city of Portland. There should be no limitations to anybody in that building wanting to use that service, that amenity for mental health reasons, addiction services to better themselves. So thank you.
Yeah, agreed. And the corollary of that, of course, just to be clear, not everybody in 0 to 30% needs the supportive component either.
Everybody, again, like I've stated, should have the option to use it, or their relatives that visit them, or people in their units at the time that might need that assistance at the time. This is a great service to have, a great amenity, and it's kind of going into the settlement agreement plan, as you know, geographically locating, which again, that's what you're doing by doing this in working with the Unity Senator, our Unity Senator. Thank you.
Yeah, good testimony. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. All right, so with that, colleagues, any further discussions or questions? Very good. Carla, could you please call the roll on item 746?
Saltzman?
Well, I want to congratulate the Housing Bureau and the Cully, all the active groups in Cully, including the Neighborhood Association, for identifying yet another site to develop affordable housing for our residents. It sounds like a great piece of property, and I'm sure it'll be a great thing we put on that property, too. Aye.
Udaley?
Thank you to the Housing Bureau, and thank you to Living Coley for being such great community partners. Aye.
Fish?
I'm really excited about this acquisition, and Mayor, I also want to just say I think you and Director Callahan have come up with a new way of talking about the bond and how we're getting money out the door, which is an improvement over how we used to communicate the progress. And it allows people to see that we are actually well on track to meeting the commitment that we made to the community. So I'm very pleased with that. We have institutionalized our thinking about permanent supportive housing. To Lightning's point, it is now embedded in all that we do in new construction and in preservation. And Lightning's exactly right, and the other testimony is exactly right, that our challenge is twofold. One is to continue to have the will to put the units aside and subsidize them. The second is to provide the services. The combination of the subsidy plus the services is approximately $15,000 a unit per year. Now, do the math on the 2,000 units we've committed to. We can't get there without a robust partnership with the county, with the state, and at some point with a partner in Washington. So I'm very pleased with this action and proud to vote aye.
Wheeler?
Well, I've speechified enough on this. I'm enthusiastically supportive. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Please call the roll on item 747.
Saltzman?
I also want to thank Mayor Wheeler. Also, aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you, everybody, for your hard work. Next item, we're going to do a little bit of magic here to accommodate the quorum. Item 773, this is being moved from the PM agenda. This was noticed in the Tuesday memo. If you could read item 773, please.
Amend inclusionary housing to make technical corrections to the fee in lieu payment following the implementation of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan and Zoning Code, and to clarify that the calculation is based on gross residential and residential-related square footage.
Colleagues, this ordinance is technical in nature. The ordinance replaces and adds a few key words for clarity and purpose of Section F of the inclusionary housing fee in lieu. The ordinance changes a grammatical error, changing they to the, and adds residential and residential-related. These are technical changes that need to be made following the adoption and implementation of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan that went into effect on May 24th of 2018. New commercial mixed-use zones were adopted that need to be reflected in the document. The fee in lieu schedule must reflect the incorporated land use and zoning changes. These technical changes of the Portland Housing Bureau's response to feedback and requests from the development community to clarify the fee in lieu section of inclusionary housing. Director Callahan.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. As you have said, we are doing two things with this ordinance. One is a clarification regarding the fee in lieu applying only to residential portions of a building. This actually came up when we had a building come in through BDS to calculate their fee, and we realized based on various portions of the code that we had confused the intent, the original intent of council, and so we are clarifying that today. The secondly is in response to the comprehensive plan adoption and the change in the underlying zoning for the city, as well as a simple consolidation of the fee. Matthew Chabald and myself are here to answer any particular questions you may have.
I don't see any. Let's go straight to public testimony. Carla's getting the list for us. And Dan, we're going to do the children's levy appointments next.
Okay, great.
Two people signed up, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson and Brian Owendorf.
Very good. Come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. You go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners, to allow me to speak on behalf. My name is Brian Owendorf. I live and work in the city of Portland and have been involved in commercial development for over 30 years, a third of that here in Portland, including 6 mixed-use towers in downtown Portland. I'm here today to express my full support of the changes to the ordinance. I have been heavily involved in the design of large-scale mixed-use projects in downtown Portland, and the project that was mentioned is a potential development of a 35-story tower, which has 3 components: an office component, a hotel component, and a mixed-use or a residential component. The way the ordinance is currently written right now, we would actually have to pay for a fee in lieu of almost $29 million to offset just 28 affordable housing units, which would frankly kill the project. I think it's fair to have this payment be attributable only to the residential units. This will frankly kill a lot of mixed-use projects absent this change to have it just be applied to the residential side. Let me use real-life numbers. This site currently today throws off about $160,000 of real property taxes and income taxes. If this project moves forward, it would raise that number to close to $10 million per year on this full block. So over a 10-year period, it would be over $100 million of net new income to the city to fund vital city services. The other point I wanted to make is that this will, like I said, make large mixed-use events like a mixed-use tower not be economically feasible. So I hope you will support this amendment because, in my opinion, this was not the intent of the original legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is correct, by the way. Yep. This is tuning it back to the intent.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Yep. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Charles Bridge Crane Johnson, and I have developed 0 mixed-use towers. Whether or not at 2 o'clock in the morning all the bathrooms were locked and I had to urinate on one, Fifth Amendment. So it's good to have a developer from the community come in and engage on this. When we talk about this, though, we also want to talk about that we only had a partial victory in Salem. We need to be looking at both ends of the spectrum, ways that we can fine-tune IZ, inclusionary zoning, so that developers can bring forth units that will have affordability within them, and also to get developers and the state legislature to understand that 0 to 30 MFI people aren't going away. We'll have them forever, and we need an inclusionary zoning statute that addresses every type of resident in this city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both. We appreciate it. Any further discussion? Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
I'm really glad that Mr. Owendorf came today because one of the things we heard beyond people saying we should make technical changes to strengthen IZ was that IZ effectively prevented a development from proceeding. He has essentially clobbered that issue by indicating that with this technical change that we're making, he's prepared to proceed with a very robust development proposal. And nowhere in his testimony did he say that IZ prevented this from penciling out. So we look forward to lots of other developers stepping up and following the law as well, because as Dan Salzman famously said a few months ago, IZ is not going anywhere. Aye.
Wheeler?
I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thank you. Next item, 763, please.
Mayor, I thought we were going to do the seconds on 780 and 781 just while I'm here. It's a second reading, even though it's
happy to do that. Hold off for one moment. Please call 780. It's off
780.
the afternoon.
Authorize a contract with Brown and Caldwell, Inc. for professional engineering services for the asset management program for continuous collection systems planning project for a total not to exceed amount of $1,249,498.
Colleagues, this is a second reading of an ordinance. This has already been read in council. A presentation has been provided. Testimony has already been given. Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
And just to clarify, this is one of the items that we're bringing off of the afternoon schedule to the morning schedule for quorum purposes, and it was noticed in the Tuesday memo. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 781, please. Also a second reading.
Authorize a competitive solicitation for utility bill presentment at an estimated cost of $7,500,000.
Please call the roll.
There's an amendment request for this.
Very good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We would like the council to declare that an emergency exists because the city needs to issue a competitive solicitation to ensure its ability to produce and mail utility bills, including doing these activities during disaster recovery. Therefore, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect after the date of passage.
Second.
There's a motion. Actually, somebody has to make the motion on the council.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Saltzman makes the motion.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Fish seconds the amendment. Please call the roll on the amendment, Carla. Sorry to have you running around. I apologize.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
All right. So to the main motion, second reading, please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Kathy's here. Thanks for your great work. Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Thank you. Thanks for your help. Thanks for Commissioner Fish. Next item, item 763, please.
Appoint Ted Wheeler and reappoint Julie Young for terms to expire June 30, 2020, and reappoint Dan Saltzman for a term to expire December 31, 2018, to the Portland Children's Levy Allocation Committee.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. Today I have the honor of asking my council members to join me in renewing the term of Julie S. Young as the city representative for the Portland Children's Levy. The Children's Levy has a 5-person oversight board composed of a city and a county commissioner, as well as 3 representatives appointed by the city, the county, and the Portland Business Alliance, respectively. Julie Young has been an invaluable member and a wonderful colleague on the allocation committee. She has brought wisdom and dedication to her role as we oversee funding decisions for the levy. This year alone, we invested nearly $21 million in programs in early childhood, after school, mentoring, child abuse prevention and intervention, foster care, and hunger relief. So I'm very pleased that she has agreed to serve an additional 2 years, and I look forward to working with her for the remaining months of my tenure as the committee chair. Julie is in the audience today, and I'd just like to maybe raise your hand, Julie, so we can acknowledge you and thank you. I'm also asking for a reappointment on the allocation committee through the end of December as my city council term winds down. And then I will pass the baton to Mayor Wheeler, who will take over in January as the Portland Children's Levy allocation chair, and I'm very grateful for his decision to do that. It's validating to me to be able to leave the allocation committee in such good hands. The mayor is very familiar with the levy, having served as an allocation committee member while he was county chair, and he's been an enthusiastic supporter of our mission and is happy to return. So, as I said earlier, I thank him for his continued stewardship of the levy mission, and I know he will be an inspired leader. And I also want to use this opportunity just to once again thank city voters and all of our backers who overwhelmingly renewed the Portland Children's Levy in May for another 5 years by a resounding 83% approval. The overwhelming approval speaks to the confidence that the public has in the levy's 15-year track record of investing in proven programs that make a difference in the lives of children and doing it with a 5% administrative cap. So I ask for adoption of the appointments.
Mayor, I have two questions.
Commissioner Fish.
So the first question is, Commissioner Saltzman, the irony in this is that upon your retirement from the council, you're going to have extra time. And given your passion for this work, it would seem to me that the council would be wise in soliciting whether you would continue to serve in some official capacity on this children's levy. Is the principal obstacle to that the levy language requires that there be an elected official from both the county and the city? Or is it some other impediment?
Well, I think, yes, the language does require that the city or county representatives be an elected official, and I will no longer be an elected official after December 31st.
So you could serve at some point in the future as a civilian?
Yes, that's possible, but.
And Mayor, the other question I had for you is, because historically a member of council other than the mayor has served as the city's designee, I wonder why it is that you are locking into a term through June 30th of 2020 rather than a term of, say, February 1st of 2019 in order for you and the council to determine if there's another member of the council who would want that or is well suited for that position, particularly in light of the fact that the mayor already serves on the FBDNR board and has a full plate of other responsibilities. Is there anything that would preclude us from shortening your term just to give you that opportunity to decide whether you or someone else is best suited?
No, there's nothing that I'm aware of that precludes that opportunity.
Commissioner Saltzman, is there any reason why?
Well, I prefer that it stay as it is. I mean, you can always change the appointment at any time, but I think the term runs through 2020 as we've identified in our bylaws. So I'd prefer we just leave it as it is.
But we are reappointing you for a limited period of time.
Right.
So let me break the stalemate. I think it is important that we have a very clear transition for the children's levy, and Commissioner Saltzman isn't picking me just because I'm the mayor. He's also picking me because I've done this before, and there's a clear transition point. But in the interest of collaboration, I will work with my colleagues on the city council just as we do with other bureau assignments, and to the degree that the council would rather have somebody else or feels that it's more appropriate for somebody else to fill that role.
Or you may feel it's more appropriate, Mayor, given the limited time that you have.
With other commitments and priorities, I will certainly remain flexible on that front. I don't see any reason for me to I agree with Commissioner Saltzman. For now, let's go ahead and approve it, but I'm making a public commitment that I'll work with all of you, and if we find a path that works better for all of us, let's do it.
Well, and the thing I want to keep the door open to is that, if at some point a new member of council is a champion for children, or you determine that you're overextended and would rather have someone put more time and energy into this, I want you to have that option that isn't foreclosed by agreeing to a term through 2020. And what I'm hearing from you and Commissioner Saltzman is the term does not preclude that.
In my opinion, it does not preclude that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Saltzman. Please call the roll.
Saltzman?
Well, again, thank you, Julie, for your service and continued service, and thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for your upcoming reappointment to the Allocation Committee. I appreciate it very much. Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
So this is, I'm going to go on just a bit here. I want to tell a story again, and then I'll get to the specifics. So when Barack Obama was running for president the first time, whether you like the guy or don't like the guy, he was having a fundraiser at my house. My wife was very supportive and held an event called Women for Obama. And Nancy Pelosi, who was then the Speaker of the House of the United States House of Representatives, was the speaker who came to Portland, Oregon. And she walked up the front steps and saw a sign in our front yard supporting the children's levy. And she asked, well, what's this all about? And we told her that this was a community response to needs for youth in our community. And it was driven by the public, and it included a broad coalition of community service organizations and volunteers and others. And it was a joint effort between different governments, and the private sector had an important role. And she was fascinated by it and asked lots and lots of follow-up questions and said, wow, this is great to be in a community that puts its youth first in a really visible and tangible way. And Commissioner Saltzman, your leadership on this over the years and your inspiration to do this, I think has really been one of the most important milestones in a long career. And I'm honored to provide that transition, and I'm mindful of what Commissioner Fish has said, and I'm committed to working with this council to make sure that continues to be successful, whether I'm there in that role as chair, whether somebody else on the council is determined to be more appropriate at a future date. So thank you for your immediate trust in me. I vote aye, the report's accepted. Thank you. Next item is item 764.
Accept and appropriate a grant in the amount of $30,000 and authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation, Transportation Safety Division for the 2018 Motor Carrier Safety Action Plan for commercial motor vehicle inspections by the Police Bureau traffic sworn personnel.
Colleagues, the goal of ODOT's Motor Carrier Safety Action Plan is to reduce accidents involving commercial motor vehicles and to reduce injuries and fatalities resulting from accidents that involve them. Vehicle inspections occur on state, county, and municipal highways without in the official limits of the City of Portland. This grant provides $30,000 towards completing on-road inspections during this fiscal year. The city has participated in this grant program since 2012, and this program supports our Vision Zero mission. This grant would help to fund the staffing necessary to complete the on-road inspections from July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. Inspections are completed by certified Police Bureau Traffic Division sworn personnel. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Lindsay. I'm with the Fiscal Division of the Portland Police Bureau. I'm here to answer any questions. Mayor already went ahead and explained the grant ordinance. We ask that you accept that so that we can do this great work.
Do you have a sense of how many of these inspections we do on an annual basis?
I do not, and I'm sorry for that. I do know about the grant. Unfortunately, our traffic division is in a regional training right now, so I was requested to stand up and...
No worries. So, and this is funding then that we are receiving from the state to conduct these
Correct.
Inspections. Is that
yes,
a fair way of characterizing this?
Exactly, yes.
Very good. Thank you. Any further questions before I open this up for testimony? Carla, is there anybody signed up for testimony?
I'm sorry, I didn't have a sign-up sheet for this one.
Would anybody like to testify on the state grant? I see one person who'd like to testify. Come on up. Thanks, Catherine.
Can I ask what's this about? I just have an experience recently about motor vehicles. I work for a Target store, and one of our employees was riding a bicycle and was hit by a driver, and he's in the hospital, and he's Hispanic. And it's just kind of I wrote Commissioner Fritz about this, and he's a young guy, and he's in the hospital, and motor vehicle safety is an interest to me, and just want to say that.
Yeah, so my understanding of this, and I don't know if Catherine has a different perspective, it is actually related to the safety of the vehicle itself. And in the ordinance, what it says, performing inspections of commercial vehicles, drivers, including licensure, general cargo and or hazardous materials, and this is being done on behalf of and at request of the state. So this is the state basically paying us in our jurisdiction to conduct these inspections and having certified trained personnel do those inspections. Is that a fair interpretation?
Correct, sir. These are sworn traffic professionals who understand what the safety parameters are. They go ahead and they make an assessment of commercial vehicles. Those are vehicles doing commercial business. They then do these inspections to ensure that safety of individuals like the gentleman's friend are being taken care of. So.
And it says here that it actually authorizes us to either take the CMV, the commercial motor vehicle registration, or the driver off duty if they are deemed not fit to be able to drive a commercial vehicle safely.
Exactly.
So it gives us that authorization.
Correct.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We were not going to speak on this at all. However, the conversation stimulated some questions that we hope we can get some answers to. This did not involve a normal person in a car going down the highways. We can assume that. Is that fair?
Correct. This is for
Okay,
commercial.
I like that word commercial. However, are we taking the place of the state and they're reimbursing us for the cost? Is that what we're doing?
They're assisting us in defraying the costs of doing these
Assisting.
inspections.
Are they covering the cost?
They are providing $30,000 in grant funds toward those.
All right, suppose you exceed $30,000, what happens?
That is a question I'm not able to answer at this moment.
I'm sorry.
That's a question I'm not able to answer at this moment.
Okay, that's one of our concerns. That it sounds like you have these commercial vehicles like trucks going down the state highway and they're being stopped by the Portland police.
If they're within our jurisdiction, I'm going to say that that's a possibility.
Okay, and then we're being reimbursed, but we're not being reimbursed past $30,000. Why the limit?
That limit was coordinated between the traffic division and the traffic division program manager and the Oregon Department of Transportation.
And the state legislature,
And the
which
state
provides the funding. Look,
Exactly.
Mr. Walsh, so this relates to three areas: the driver, the vehicle itself, and the condition of the vehicle, as well as hazardous materials.
No,
And
it's
they're-
four.
No,
It's four.
I'm looking at the
You're
ordinance.
forgetting the citizens. They're paying for this some way.
Well, listen, here's the deal. If there is a truck going through our city and the driver is either not fit to serve, or the truck is not in a safe condition, or the materials on board, which are hazardous, are not being carried appropriately, we should pull that vehicle over and sort out the details later. The state is reimbursing us up to $30,000. Could it cost us more than that? Yes, it certainly could. We're still going to do it, though.
That doesn't
So
make
the
any
question is,
sense.
do you want the $30,000 or not? That's the question.
Do I want to?
Do you
No, I
want the
want what it
reimbursement or not?
cost. If the
And she
state,
gave you an answer.
if
She
the
said she
state
doesn't know the
is
total cost.
responsible for that truck driving on our freeways and highways, and they set up a check stop, then why are we doing it? That doesn't make sense
Because
to me.
we want to protect our public. That's, if you don't like
you
the
can-
structure,
If you do it 2
by all
miles
means,
outside
the
of Portland,
legislature's in session in
if you
January and raise
check a
it.
truck 2 miles outside of Portland, do you think they're going to sneak some really bad stuff in the next 2 miles to get to Portland?
If they do, we'll be ready for it. That's the whole point of this program.
Well, that's paranoia.
No, it's protecting the people who live here. Come on, it's not paranoia.
Then you shouldn't
Anyway,
put a
thank you for
limit
your
on it.
testimony. Is there anybody else who'd like to testify? Seeing none.
Well, there you
Good.
go again. I was doing so good today.
You were indeed.
We are on the record opposing this.
the list is
You
closed.
oppose safety inspections for vehicles and drivers
No,
in
we
hazardous
are on the
categories. Okay,
record.
you are on the record.
We are
Good
on
afternoon.
the
Excuse me.
record
You're done. Your time is up.
The limitation
Your time is
of
up.
$30,000.
You're opposed to the ordinance.
Would
Your
you let
time
me
is
get
up.
the motion and on the record?
Okay, Mr. Walsh, your time's up.
What?
Your time is
Mayor
up.
just said so. He's
You're walking on other people's time.
Get him away from me.
No, your time is up. You're the one who is in violation of the council rules.
Violation. You're in violation.
Good morning.
Hi, I just had one
So just to be
question.
clear, the
Malcolm
ordinance is
Chaddock.
very specific.
Yeah, I
This
got
is
that
safety
part.
inspections, drivers,
Right, I
vehicles,
understand what you've
hazardous
said.
cargoes. The state is offering to reimburse us up to
Right.
$30,000 for doing that. I think it's
Yes.
a great idea. Tell me I'm wrong.
Actually, I don't.
Not you, you've testified.
So I don't think that you're wrong. I would just like to know the difference. We get $30,000 up front to help defray the costs, but how much are the total costs? I mean,
So the-
are we
the
going to get
financial
really
analyst
stung?
who is here representing the police bureau says she does not have that information with her today.
How can we get it?
That is a good question. I will have to take
So
a
could you
look
direct
at-
your questions to the council? We actually don't allow witnesses to interrogate presenters.
I just- okay.
So the question
Then
you've
how do I
asked
get
is,
it?
what's the cost?
Yeah.
We've asked.
Let's do a
She doesn't
hypothetical.
know.
No,
Let's
Mayor,
do a
Mayor, we've asked
hypothetical.
the
Let's
presenter-
say it costs $40,000 and the state is only offering us $30,000. Should we take it or not? That's the
Mayor,
question.
I want to just, reserving my right to ask a question.
Fair enough.
At some point, when you get an estimate of what you think the annual cost would be, would you send the council an email?
I sure will, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll share it with any member of the public that would like to access that information.
Thank you very much, and that was all.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Well, I think this is a very important function that needs to be continued to provided by Portland Police and the state too, if they're, I don't know what the state is actually doing, but if they're doing something, it's important because it's really frightening when you hear the results of these inspections. As I recall from past years when we've voted on this, I think something like over 50%, maybe even 75% of trucks that are pulled over are taken out of service as a result of that being stopped and inspected for either driver issues or vehicle issues. So it's pretty frightening and very important to have this continued enforcement. Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler,
This is common sense. Of course, I support it. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item is 765. Could you just read it? We're going to move it.
accept proposal of Gresham Ford for mobile data computers for the Portland Police Bureau for an initial term of 5 years, not to exceed $2 million.
So 765 has been moved to the PM regular agenda. That's this afternoon. It was noticed in the Tuesday memo. Please read item 766. It's also moved.
766, accept bid of Corpac Construction Company for the Northwest 20th Avenue LID project for $4,012,488.
Item 766 has been moved to the PM regular agenda. That was also noticed on the Tuesday memo. Item 767, please.
767, amend price agreement with G4S Secure Solutions USA, Inc., to increase contract by $2,972,799 to provide for uniform security officer services.
Very good. So we have Dorothy Elmore and David Longley, our facilities construction project manager, to walk us through it. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and City Portland Commissioners. I'm David Olungi, OMF Facilities Division Manager. I'm here today in the company of Dorothy Elmore, Facility Security Manager. We are here today to present on the Facility Security Price Agreement, a contract which extends for a 5-year term. It was solicited in 2014 and was won in a competitive process against 6 other firms by G4S Secure Solutions. The contract is scheduled to expire in 2019.
I just want to be very clear about something. The action item before us today has to do with a COLA for the workers represented by one of our local union partners. It is not a question of whether we're going to extend this contract. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're not
We have an
extending the
existing
contract.
term through 2019, but the question today is simply whether we're going to grant a cost of living increase to the represented employees of SEIU Local 49 who work for us. Is that correct?
That is correct, along with some other measures too.
Okay, thank you.
Here is a list of facilities and buildings that currently have posted security services in them. The Portland Building, Portland City Hall, the 1900 Building at Southwest 4th, the Peabot Maintenance and Operations Facility at North Kirby, Union Station, and the Emergency Coordination Center and the Portland Communication Center. We are here today seeking authorization to amend the contract, not extend it, and to increase the limit to accommodate additional incurred services for the remainder of the fiscal year. And here to talk about those will be Dorothy Elmore and talk about the details of that in additional services.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Dorothy Elmore, and I'll give you a breakdown of specific funds that we are requesting. So funds in the amount of $570,995 was approved in the fall bump of 2017 for services at City Hall for the term September 2017 through June of 2018. The funds in the amount of $815,097 is to allow for additional security services requested by the bureaus and provided in the 2017-18 budget year to include the following locations or facilities: 400 Southwest 6, Amtrak at Union Station, Water Bureau Interstate Office, Peabot's Albina Yard, the 1900 building, including the BDS portion, and dispatch services. There are funds to, we're requesting funds to allow for the continuation of services in the 2018-19 budget year, and that was the COLA that Commissioner Fish was speaking about. Funds in the amount of $555,105 is approved in the adopted budget 2018 to allow for the continuation of services at City Hall in the 1900 building. We're asking for contingency funds in the amount of $400,000 to allow for unanticipated events requiring security services. And then lastly, we're asking for funds in the amount of $50,000 to allow for future escorts at city secured facilities like the Police Bureau, BOAC, and water. And that is, when we talk about escorts, sometimes the contractors are not allowed, contractors who service our elevators, our HVAC systems, are not allowed into these high secured buildings. We need to have security escort them while they do their work and stand by while they finish up their work and then escort them out the building.
So facility shall return here, Commissioners and Mayor, in the spring of 2019, following the next solicitation for request for proposals to present you the winner of the 2019 to the 2024 contract for security. And that completes our presentation.
Very good. So I understand that the contract is going to be rebid, is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And when is that going to happen?
We're starting the process right now with the RFP bidding, so I'm actually working through that process right now for rewriting the RFP and getting a committee together for the evaluation portion of that.
Very good.
So the present contract expires in the spring of 2019. So by that point, we will have gone through the RFP process and appointed a new contractor.
Great. Thank you. Is there a public testimony on this item, Carla?
Yes.
Very good.
Yes, we have 9 people signed up. The first 3, please come on up, are Malcolm Chaddock, Edith Gillis, and Joel Beanen.
And I just want to remind people what this ordinance is and what it is not. This is not a question about extending the contract. This is not granting a contract. This is about the COLA for the employees. So please keep your testimony focused on that. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I believe you're first. No?
Oh, I'd like to actually step back for a moment and let somebody else go first.
My name is Joel Beanen. I'm professor of Middle East history at Stanford University, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Portland chapter of Jewish Voice for Peace. Mayor Wheeler, when you voted last year to end city investments in corporate securities, you stated your belief that denying procurement contracts to companies that abuse human rights was a more effective way to get a company to change its behavior. Today, the council is being asked to approve a $2.9 million increase for G4S Secure Solutions, the world's largest private security firm. Most of that money apparently will go to the workers who deserve the cost of living increases being requested. We have no quarrel with that. Jewish Voice for Peace, however, is concerned that the company in question has a long history of problematic activities. The BBC recently charged G4S with abusing immigrants at detention centers in the United Kingdom. G4S received a $119 million contract to provide security to build a pre-Trump administration version of the border wall with Mexico. G4S supplies services to Israeli checkpoints and the separation barrier in the West Bank and to the Israeli police. It also provides security systems and other services for major Israeli prisons, which hold Palestinian political prisoners from occupied Palestinian territory inside Israel. This is in contravention to Article 76 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which prohibits the transfer of prisoners from occupied territory into the territory of the occupier. G4S also provides equipment for prisons and detention facilities in the occupied West Bank, at which human rights organizations have documented systematic torture and ill treatment of Palestinian prisoners, including children. Video evidence shows cars with G4S logos supplying the security systems used by the Israeli government to restrict Palestinian access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. In December 2016, G4S sold its Israeli affiliate, G4S Secure Solutions Israel, but the firm still does business under the G4S Israel name and uses the G4S logo. As a sanctuary city, and as a city that prides itself on its progressive character, Portland should not be working with a company like G4S. When G4S's contract with the city expires in May 2019, we hope the city will not extend that contract and will either choose a new vendor or hire workers directly with all the protections they currently enjoy under their SEIU contract. Thank you.
Thank you. And just thank you for your testimony. And just to reiterate, it is being RFP'd. And so today, let's focus on the part which you did mention in your testimony. There will be an entirely new selection process. There will be more public discussions. It will come back to the City Council when we are looking at the master contract. But I thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Malcolm Chaddick, and I am here as a founding member of Individuals for Justice and Oregonians Against War. I'd like to echo what the gentleman for JVP just said about the cost of living. Of course, everyone needs to be able to keep up with the cost of their food. But I'm concerned at the expansion of services that is implied in this request, in as much as we have already determined, it seems pretty broadly, that most likely we're not going to renew with them because they're not the right guys. So expanding their purview to me seems to be a step in the wrong direction. And so I would like to, ask that that be looked at, that if there is indeed additional monies going to G4S, that they be absolutely tied to the cost of living and not to an expansion of services of any sort.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Hello, my name is Edith Gillis, and I am a proud member of SEIU. I am pro cost of living adjustment for SEIU employees and all other workers. I am totally opposed to GS4 or G4S, and we can require that they spend the money for cost of living for appropriate behavior by appropriate persons, and not for the kind of behavior that G4S has been guilty of. I want us to be consistent with city past positive proclamations and policies to promptly cancel G4S and begin investigating and prosecuting the corporate police and individuals guilty of assault, kidnapping, torture, rape, murder, theft, extortion, terrorism, treason, and international crimes against humanity. Protect our hard-earned tax dollars from being wasted on sadly well-earned expensive lawsuits. Defend us from worsening reasons for alienation and loss of trust and cooperation with city government. Serve our security for all people of Portland across all class, income, health, mental and physical, housing, political beliefs, ethnicity, language, neurodiversity, gender, race, religion, nationality, country of origin, and appearance and manners. Pay people to express empathy, equity, and respect. Don't criminalize poverty and protest. We need to give Portlanders fewer reasons to protest and to be poor and more hope for progress and justice for all. Invest in liberty, equity, justice, and mercy for all, not the use of local terrorism, oppression, and suppression. Give Portlanders better reasons to feel secure in peace with fewer reasons to feel outraged. Promptly hold cops, contractors accountable, prosecute crimes committed by the wealthy, and stop criminalizing poverty. Have more each week for Portlanders to testify to City Council in their neighborhoods and accessible locations with public transit, free parking, and child care and elder care. More time each meeting for topics of concern for Portlanders, not just what's on the agenda, with shorter lead time. More citizen engagement with real oversight and transparency. Change the policies to ensure safe housing with solar, food security, clean air, water, education and mental health services, immigration, resettlement, legal services, and drug treatment, crime prevention, and community security from gentrification.
Thank you. Thanks, all three of you. Next three, please, Carla.
Are Olivia Catby-Smith, Juno Suarez, and Joe Walsh.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name, for the record, is Juno Suarez. I am a member of the Portland Democratic Socialists of America. I'm testifying today on my own behalf, not on behalf of the organization. First, I wanted to say that I support PCC 399, the Portland Fair Wage Policy that Commissioner Fish alluded to in terms of the cost of living adjustment, which sets the minimum wage for security employees. We absolutely support the union collective bargaining agreement and process generally and the work that happens there. From the presentation from staff, the amount of this request that is going to the COLA is $581,000, and the total amount of this request is about $2.9 million. So the remainder of that is going to expanded services, as well as a $400,000 contingency for unanticipated events. When we know that the best security is a community whose other needs are being met, like expanded mental health and housing services, and this money would be much better spent in those ways. From the recent decision about the use of or divestment, I guess, from corporate securities, one of the things that didn't come out of that discussion was a corporate social responsibility screen for investments. Likewise, I think it's a big missed opportunity for the city not to have a corporate social responsibility screen on procurement and in contracting and during the RFP process. So that is definitely something that I would like to see, because I think that one of the things that happens when bureaus are making requests for the services that they need to operate and to do the business of the city of Portland is that some of the values in the contractors that are chosen in the procurement process end up not aligning with our values as a city. And that's something that we could do better on in that RFP process. So when the contract expires in 2019, I believe that the city should not renew with G4S. And with the brief remainder of my time, I'd like to read an excerpt from ACLU of Oregon keynote speakers Angela Davis' speech about G4S. G4S participates directly and blatantly in the maintenance and reproduction of oppressive apparatuses in Palestine, in prisons, checkpoints, the apartheid wall. G4S represents not only the privatization of security, but the privatization of imprisonment, the privatization of warfare, as well as the privatization of healthcare and education. G4S is the third largest private corporation in the world. G4S has insinuated itself into our lives under the guise of security and the security state, from the Palestinian experience of political incarceration and torture to racist technologies of separation and apartheid, from the wall in Israel to the wall and prison-like schools on the US and Mexico border. G4S contracts with ICE, G4S contracts with the IDF, and G4S should not be contracting with the City of Portland. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Olivia Catby-Smith, and I'm with the Democratic Socialists of America. I am here to register my deep concern regarding the city's contract with G4S. G4S is well known for committing horrific human rights abuses all over the world. I'm just going to take a quick second to read you some recent headlines and news clippings regarding G4S. Detainees mocked and abused at immigration center. Private firms are using detained immigrants as cheap labor, deporting people to death. The bus no one wants to catch, the end of the road for illegal immigrants. G4S abuse of children detainees. G4S aids in torture at Guantanamo Bay. G4S oversees forced injections and electric shock. G4S oversees murder of 15-year-old. G4S officers sexually abuse and traffic minors. G4S guards Dakota Access Pipeline. G4S equips apartheid wall in Israel. G4S trains Israeli police to enforce apartheid and brutalize Palestinians. This is the company that the city of Portland is paying millions of dollars. Again and again, we see you pay lip service to Portland being a sanctuary city, yet you continue to line the pockets of the companies who profit off the cruel policies that destroy lives and tear families apart. We understand that these security guards are represented by SEIU. Many of our members are union organizers themselves, and we support the Portland Fair Wage Policy. But rather than giving millions of dollars to a middleman war profiteer, why not employ these security guards directly while maintaining the union contract? The city has a duty to act in a socially responsible manner in who it employs. Security is a serious matter that the city should oversee directly and be directly accountable for. Excuse me. Rather than pretending your hands are clean if problems arise because the work is contracted out. We've been told that this funding increase will go to benefit 35 employees. Unless each employee is getting an $85,000 raise, we seem to be missing some pieces here. Every single dollar that goes to G4S rather than these employees is a dollar funding human rights violations. Any increase in funds should go directly to the current employees rather than this corporation. We are also against expanding G4S services and strengthening the security state in Portland. And it seems that as though you could easily make an amendment just to put forward the COLA adjustment rather than expanding services. This is not the first time we've testified before you asking you to do something, and it won't be the last. You can dismiss us as fringe protesters and tell yourselves that you're the pragmatic, practical ones and that people like us just don't understand how the system works, but know that you are the ones with the most power to change these things. You can keep brushing us off, but you will have to live the rest of your lives knowing that so many of these things were on you, and you could have done something to stop them. Please take responsibility, and please do not continue to enrich this horrific corporation. Knowing that you're unlikely to terminate the contract now, we insist that the city commit to terminating the relationship with G4S when the contract is up in May 2019. Thank you.
Great. And by the way, you raised a really interesting point, was the question of insourcing. And I know I've had lots of conversations with SEIU, not specific to this, but over the years about opportunities to insource services that are currently privatized. And one of the opportunities that exists with any new RFP, and as I mentioned, the contract is being put out for bid, and that process is already underway. I always am very interested in looking at potential proposals around insourcing. So if you and SEIU and others want to work with the employees that are currently here on a proposal, I personally would find that very interesting. I'd look forward to that, in fact. Mr. Walsh, good afternoon.
Good morning, I think. Yes, it's noon, high noon. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We are against this. Not so much about the people that would be involved in this building and other buildings. Some of those people that are part of GS4 over the last 10 years I've met and I like, and I fight with from time to time. But they're pretty good guys. And I think that's what your dilemma is going to be here. You are pouring millions of dollars into an organization that you just heard. It's a pariah organization throughout the international settings. You all know that. So why are we associated with them? If you say no to this, and I don't expect you to do it because you have it under emergency, that means all four of you have already said you're going to vote on it. You're pouring money into an organization that we are ashamed of. That it is a bandit, a pariah, an ugly, ugly organization. You can find none in present day that holds it up. We came here before you and begged you not to get involved with this organization. This is a halfway decent guy. He can find a job at another organization. The bid would go out, and they would probably hire you, maybe give you a bonus. Why in God's name would you do this? Let me understand this. This organization came to you with a bid that ends in 2019. And now they want $3 billion to make up for what you want to do, Mayor. You expanded the security in this building and every other building. You can't walk around this building. You can't go in the restroom without a G4S guy looking you over. And I'm not that good looking. So what is it? Just say no. What happens if you say no? Does the contract go away? Or you just can't do some of the stuff that you want to do? Just say no. Who said that? Oh, Mrs. Reagan said that. Just say no.
Thank you.
The next three are Thorne Cole, Joanne Hardesty, and Charles Bridge Crane Johnson.
Would you name one other, Carla?
Joanne Hardesty. She may have left.
He may have left. Who's the next?
I think she left.
Pardon?
Is there one other individual?
No, and that's the last. These are the last three.
Very good. Would you like to go ahead?
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Thorne Coyle. I'm representing myself. I live in Portland. I own a home in Portland. I'm a concerned citizen of Portland. And I want to know, as a citizen of Portland, is Portland a sanctuary city or not? Does Portland want to foster community health and well-being or not? Why this emphasis on punishment, whether it's sweeps of our houseless communities or hiring this horrible, horrible company? This is where we have to make a decision. I refuse this option to give this corporation close to $3 million more. Their contract is up in May. You know what a business does when they're under a bad contract with bad actors? They ride it out. They starve the contract. They do not pump close to $3 million more into the contract. It's bad business. Don't do it. Sure, figure out a way for our local workers if they need the cost of living raise. Figure that out. As we've seen testimony, that's a very small percentage of this close to $3 million. $3 million between now and May for an expansion of further punitive systems. G4S profits from the abuse and incarceration of immigrants, the torture and punishment of protesters fighting for clean land and water and the health of their own communities. Are we a sanctuary city or are we not? Are we for community health and safety or are we not? If we're for those things, don't give them this money, please.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Watchdog. You've used the terms before, Mayor, moral compass. And I want you to think about that today. And if I was playing poker against you, this really concerns you. And I know that by looking at you, you begin to move in your seat because it's concerning you. And that's good. It should concern you on this issue. This company, private prisons, transportation, various things that were stated here, from the ICE office to the Tacoma facility, not paying the prisoners in there, which I have a big problem in a private prison. And as you know, Seattle challenged that. I have a big problem with that. You can make a statement today. We have morality clauses on probably this agreement. As you know, Mr. Novick, who I called a rookie when he first came out here, not because he didn't know what he was doing, it was his first year, very smart individual, basically started something to where we would look into corporations under the morality issues and do we want to do business with them anymore? Everything that was stated in this room, it would be an absolute no. Now, I like the people at G4S in this building. I like them. I think they're professional. I think they do good work. So my concern is to make sure they're taken care of, but you might not renew that contract. And how do you do that? That's your balance. These are your people also that you know on a personal daily basis, and you're concerned about this on their behalf, and I can see that by the way that you're looking at this issue. And all I'm asking you to look at this from a morality standpoint, private prisons, people being not taken care of, people being exploited on labor issues, the transportation of people from the ICE office to the Tacoma facility, various things that go on. You could not vote yes if you believe in what your statement is, the morality compass. And you can take that contingency of the $400,000 today and say it's not necessary because I believe there is an issue on the morality clause in this agreement. There is an issue with you using the term morality compass. Stand by what you say, make the change at least on the contingency of the $400,000 and take that away, and then you don't have to renew the contract when it comes up again in 2019. And I don't think you are. I honestly look at you, and when you made that statement, you're going to stand by that statement. You're not going to renew that contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And I was glad to hear a lot of great testimony from the previous people talking. One thing that was mentioned was sort of an imbalance of power. We as individual citizens testifying, our power really just peaks at election time. You right now have the power to do the right thing right now. Mr. Lightning and illuminated that with the moral compass comment. We don't usually talk about the moral compass as much as we talk about the equity lens and where this money is going and how people are living just lives. Things that matter in Portland include anti-racism, intersectional feminism. And so I was a little bit optimistic when I saw that some of this money is going to go to Ashley Almanza. Sounds kind of positive. Ashley Almanza is going to get some of this money. But Ashley is also a boy's name. Almanza, I don't know Mr. Almanza's exact ethnic and racial identity, but from the pictures, it looks like he's a white South African. So why have we as a city, and especially the two of you up there on the council for a longer term, why have we not incubated minority business, and why are we not finding a way for great people like Cindy Williams and these other G4 staffers to work for somebody other than Ashley Almanza, the white South African dude in charge of the G4S terror machine? So it's not just on us, Ted. You have the whole city administration. You can commission a report on insourcing this work. We already pay 700 police officers. Probably at one time before the privatization craze, every security personnel in the city was at one time a city employee somewhere back in history. We probably didn't privatize it out. So it's not just on us and the SCIU, it's also on the city and you commissioners that are up there. Because what's really happening is pimping. We're being pimped, or actually this gentleman, Cindy downstairs, all of them are being pimped by Ashley Almanza. And this is the nature of subcontractors that the city often stumbles against, is that their job is not just to provide the best service. Their job is to squeeze out as much work out of this guy, make him harass Joe as hard as he can, without, so just vote no on this and institute right now a system to bring these people in-house. Find a way to create a co-op of security workers so that we don't have this weirdness of Portland Patrol and ex-cops running things. There's got to be a better way in Portland than G4S. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for your testimony.
Mayor?
Commissioner Fish.
So, Mayor, I've heard a lot of interesting testimony this morning and this afternoon about potentially having a socially responsible screen on our procurement. I've heard significant community interest in how we handle this procurement and the values that we apply. I've heard a lot of shout outs to the workers that are actually affected by the COLA and questions raised about could they still be retained if somehow we didn't continue to use G4S in the future. So I think this hearing has been enormously helpful. I think the council has some decisions to make about how we do this procurement next year. We've been advised that we have a contract through 2019. The narrow question today is the additional resources to provide security services. I think it's important that no one has said anything disparaging about the people providing the services locally. It reminds me a little bit about the debate we had about Wells Fargo Bank, where there's some bad things happening at the national level, but we've had a very strong relationship with a local provider and workforce that's done a good job. So I would urge us to go forward with this vote. We have a record of concerns that people have raised about how we handle the procurement, and I think we have some further conversations as a council about how we want to manage that. But you've put this forward, and I'm prepared to vote on it.
So I would also like to just say this. Thank you. I thought the testimony was very good. And I also wrote down the socially responsible screen on procurement. I thought that was actually a really excellent idea, and it's already cogitating in my feeble brain. I do like the people who work here locally in security, and our employees in the building and in other facilities like the people who work in security, and they see them as reasonable and balanced and fair-minded and consummate professionals, and I'm proud of the work that they do. I'm not prepared to sit here today and say that they, along with SEIU and other potential local partners, could come forth with their own proposal, because I don't want to speak for them. This is really a decision that they would have to make. That being said, I think it's a really interesting idea. And as I say, it's one that we've talked with SEIU and other labor partners about in the past. Mr. Walsh and I finally found a good intersect here today, and it's around good business practices and principles. If we can find a local solution to this, if we can create a local partnership so we're not paying additional overhead or additional costs to an out-of-state or even an out-of-country contractor, but still retain the same people and the same services and have our own local principles put into effect, I think that would be really exciting. And it would be interesting. I can't promise today that could be pulled together, but I'm prepared to lead, and I'm prepared to work with my partners on that. I'm prepared to talk with Dorothy and others about what possibilities might exist, and we have time here before that RFP process comes to a conclusion. Let's see what we can put together. Might be able to create both a very local solution and a very cost-effective solution, and I'd love to see that personally.
And you've challenged, I think we've been challenged by some folks in the community to come up with a better outcome. You use the term, you don't use the term contracting in, you use the term insourcing. But let's be clear, we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And whether it's contracting in or insourcing, avoiding that extra cost of having a third party provide the service and seeing whether we can provide it internally. I think we have a lot of food for thought, but again, I would urge us to move forward on this.
Yeah, I mean, and as you said, Commissioner Fish, a good record was created today around G4S. And that's a pretty tough record at the national and the international level to overcome in a procurement process in Portland, Oregon. So let's see what we can do. With that, call the roll, Carla.
Saltzman?
I just want to say that the larger discussion about who provides security for us and other city employees will occur next year. So this is really to support those who are providing security to us now, and I just want to take this opportunity to convey my thanks to all of them for the great job they do every day, not only in City Hall, but in the Portland building when it was still functioning as an office building, and the many other city facilities that are currently receiving security from G4S employees. I find they do a very good job. I think they're very balanced, and they have a lot of experience under their belts too. So, aye.
Daly.
I want to thank everyone today for their testimony, and I want to especially thank you for showing respect to our security staff who do a hard and vital job in this building and around the city at all our buildings. I want to take this opportunity to apologize to Dorothy and Nick and Andy and for everyone else who was affected by the incident a few weeks ago, during which multiple members of our security staff were assaulted by an angry member of the public. It happened during a session that I convened at the request of the Democratic Socialists of America. And while I don't expect any organization to be able to control its individual members, I was disappointed that they declined to not condemn that act of violence that took place during the session. I am very concerned by the issues raised by ACLU and members of the public that testified here today. I am therefore requesting that OMF set a basic set of standards similar to the environmental, social, and governance policies used in finance, by which we can judge all respondents to the new RFP. Very sadly, in my experience here, it's not always possible to find another vendor who can provide all the services that we need. Wells Fargo is an excellent example of that, but I cannot imagine continuing to do business with this company. I look forward to continuing this conversation, and I would respectfully request that I am engaged in this matter as we move forward. The city, however, the city has a responsibility to protect its workers and protect the public who's here as well. And I can definitely tell you that the request from my bureau, BDS, is legitimate. You may not think a permitting office would need a lot of security support, but it is a high-stress, hostile, sometimes hostile, and occasionally dangerous work environment. So I can only speak to that particular request. I also support the COLA, and therefore I vote aye.
Fish.
I want to read a section of a letter that I received from the political director of SEIU Local 49, which is in the forefront of protecting working people in our community, who, as they rightly acknowledge, are under attack by billionaires and corporations. And I would ask that this be made part of the record. Quote, the City of Portland contracts with G4S Secure Solutions to provide a range of security services, including to employ security officers at city buildings in downtown. G4S security officers who work on the contract with the City of Portland are members of SEIU 49. With a union contract, they are given predictable wage increases each year, a voice in their working conditions, and they have access to affordable medical insurance. On Wednesday, Portland City Commissioners will have an opportunity to vote to approve the annual cost of wage increases for security workers, security officers who work for G4S. Our members hope that City Commissioners will stand on the side of working people in approving cost of living increases for G4S security officers. SEIU Local 49 stands with those who are coming together to resist the Trump administration's anti-immigrant and anti-worker policies. We hope that the city will not put security officers' wages in the middle of that fight. G4S has a range of contracts across the country and the world. The city's decision this week on whether to approve cost of living raises for security workers will make a direct impact. It will provide a little bit more breathing room in the monthly budget for 35 working families in Portland. I vote aye.
So I want to reiterate my appreciation for our local security folks, and I am probably a disproportionate user of those services, being mayor And being me, sometimes I am a controversial person in this community, and there are times and there are places where I'm very grateful for their presence. I know our employees support them, and the feedback that I get from our employees is overwhelmingly positive in terms of their professionalism and the work that they do. I want to be very clear, there is an expansion of this because there are expanded locations in which G4S is being asked to serve. But I'm also very much persuaded by what people are saying here in terms of, can we think about a different, local, innovative model that is responsive to the needs of our community? I believe the answer is yes. Let's see what we can do with it. So with that, I do vote aye, but I'm also very mindful of the larger picture people have clearly raised with regard to the long-term relationship between the City of Portland and this company. I vote aye. Thank you all for your testimony.
Moral compass, Ted. Moral compass. What does it mean?
Did I mention it's going
Republican.
to Carla? Next item, please, is item number 678. We're going to be moving that. I'm 768. I apologize, Carla.
Sure. Authorize a 5-year lease agreement for office space located at 1001 Southwest 5th Avenue to accommodate increased staffing and operations of the Bureau of Transportation, estimated at an average annual cost of $612,500.
I would like to note that item 768 has been moved to the PM session to the regular agenda. It was noticed in the Tuesday memo. I'll let you read item 769, please.
Authorize limited tax revenue bonds to provide up to $18.3 million to finance tenant space build-out and furnishings in the Portland building.
So item 769 has also been moved to the PM regular agenda. That was also noticed in the Tuesday memo. That brings up item 777.
Authorize a solicitation for asphalt concrete supply contracts estimated at $15,500,000 for use on street maintenance and preservation projects.
I'll just note that this was moved from the PM agenda to the morning session. This was noticed in the Tuesday memo. Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll turn it over to our staff person here.
Yes. Good afternoon, Michael McGee with the Bureau of Transportation. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Senior engineer, and one of my functions is pavement management, along with solving problems for the maintenance operations. This is as stated, it's tend to be a 5-year contract with multiple vendors. The asphalt we use is to fill potholes, do routine maintenance, preventive maintenance. It's a year-round operation. We need these plants to be located throughout the city, so it's important that we have access to asphalt summer, winter, spring, fall, throughout the city. So this is intended to give us the access to the asphalt we need to do good work. And I'm here to answer any questions you have about the contracts or the RFP.
Colleagues, any questions? Any public testimony on this item?
Sorry. Testimony?
Yes, any testimony on this item?
Yes, I have Charles Bridge Crane Johnson.
Charles, we're going to run out of a quorum soon. Pardon me?
Perfect, good. Thank you.
I move we limit my testimony to 1 minute. So, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. We talked a couple weeks ago about the Smart City Initiative, and I'm moving back to 6 inches away. So, I have no qualms with you voting this money, but I think that many of our neighbors would agree that part of our Smart City Initiative needs to be rapid deployment of some of these potholes. There has to be a way with some kind of impact monitoring in TriMet vehicles or city vehicles that we can do better at quickly filling, using this asphalt as for the purpose that was discussed, ameliorating potholes. There should be a way that when city trucks detect a pothole, that stuff isn't there for us to complain about in the 4-week window it takes to sign up for testimony. So no problem with you voting in favor of this, but I hope it's part of not just a business as usual, but an improving business strategy. Also, part of that is, if you've ever tried to cross the street out here, sometimes asphalt doesn't work. We can have multiple inch variations of the level of the asphalt and the sidewalk that impair people with mobility problems. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Please call the roll.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Udaly,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the ordinance is adopted. Item 770, please. This is a second reading.
Authorize a development agreement between the city and Portland State University, Oregon Health Sciences University, and Portland Community College for the development and creation of a new commercial multi-level condominium building known as the Jasmine Block at 401 Southwest Harrison Street.
So, colleagues, this is a second reading of the ordinance, but I'm informed by the Bureau that they need a technical amendment. Robert, could you listen to this testimony carefully, because I believe we will need to pass it on again to a second reading, but if that's not the case, will you let me know? Do we have David O'Longley here? David's right there in the front. Thank you. Hey, could you let us know what the technical amendment question was? And I know you want us to add an emergency, if you could explain that as well.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I have with me here Aaron Beck, who's the financial analyst with OMF Facilities.
Thanks, sir.
I believe our technical amendment is because only the mayor and the auditor has the authority to authorize payment. In the previous development agreement, we had listed the CAO as having that authority, so we needed to correct that technical error.
So let me ask a question of Robert. So under current code, they are basically correcting it to comport with existing code. Does that require us, if we accept this technical amendment, to move it to another second reading, given that we're bringing it back into alignment with existing code?
There was also...
Oh, there's more. Never mind. Wait.
Aaron Beck, OMF Business Operations. There was one other thing that we removed from the original ordinance, and that was specifying the exact number of payments and the amount. The reason we removed that was to give us the flexibility to add on anything that we would need to pay to PSU for things we specifically request, and that those things are allowed under the development agreement and that we have budgeted for.
So, Mayor, what I'm going to suggest is that we accept the technical amendments and that we put an emergency clause because this is time sensitive, and we vote on this today.
Very good. So let's first take a vote on the technical amendments.
And by the way, on the technical amendment that you've identified that says only the mayor or the auditor, something tells me that in our code or our practice, the mayor is authorized to delegate explicitly to a third person to provide that function. That would be a chief of staff in his absence. That would be the CAO. So I hope we don't do a series of technical amendments every time this comes up, and I hope we just establish somewhere that the mayor has the authority to knowingly delegate to some third party. He's still responsible, but it seems to me we shouldn't have to do a technical amendment every time the mayor wants to delegate to the CAO signature authority.
I agree with that. So, Robert, do you see any problem in us moving the package of technical amendments and then putting an emergency clause and taking a vote today? Great. So why don't we do that? Carla, could you call the roll, please? Those were the two major technical amendments, correct?
That's correct.
Carla, could you please call the roll on the package of technical amendments?
I'm sorry, I didn't get who moved and seconded.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Fish moves, Commissioner Saltzman seconds. Please call the roll. Thank you, Carla, for keeping me honest.
You're welcome. Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
All right, the technical amendments are adopted.
So, Mayor, I move to slap an emergency clause on Council Item 770.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Saltzman. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. To the main motion, second reading is amended. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I want to thank everybody who's worked very, very hard on this. And it's always hilarious that it comes down to wrapping ourselves around the axle of small technical amendments. But to the larger issue here, thank you for your tremendous work. And this is great progress, and I appreciate it. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. And I believe that leaves
We have
us-
748 left.
We have 748 and 771 we decided to keep on the afternoon session. Was that where we left that? Okay, so 748 is the
Who pulled that, Carla?
last item.
Joe Walsh pulled that.
Mr. Walsh is not here, so it's as a report. Mayor, I move the report.
I should read the title. 748, reappoint Gustavo J. Cruz Jr. and William Myers to the Prosper Portland Board for terms to expire June 30, 2021.
Mayor, these are existing board members. We have information in our council packets. I move the report.
We have a motion. We have a second from Commissioner Udaley. Please call the roll.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fish.
These are two terrific additions to the Prosper Portland Board, and I'm very proud to support their reappointment. Aye.
Wheeler.
So the council has collectively decided on a policy to put reappointments to boards and commissions on the consent agenda as they are known, they have a record, they have been previously introduced to council. That is the case here. These are two outstanding reappointments. I strongly support both of them, and I appreciate their service to the community. I vote aye. The report is accepted, and we are adjourned till 2 p.m.